Opening, Minato became my brother. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1 Yuli was kidnapped and her soul traveled through time after her death. Hey, you little brat over there, come here, kneel on the ground, and bark like a dog for me. If I am happy, then this half of the bun will be yours. Ha 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 ha. Hideo, you still have such a bad taste. This is so boring, kid. Do you hear me? Do you want it or not? If you don't want it, the thin man known as Black Knife looked at the teenager, who was huddled in the corner with wounds all over his body like a beggar, with a gleam of amusement in his eyes. He gently shook the bitten bun in his hand towards the teenager. The young man raised his head somewhat stiffly, revealing his dirty, skinny and hungry face. His eyes, which should have been full of youthful ambition, seemed to have lost their luster, and he stared stupidly at the two men who were laughing and calling him not far away at this time. The boy's body was covered with bruises and wounds, and he had not eaten for 2 days. As if he didn't react, he stood there in a daze for a moment. After a moment, Yuli silently lay on the ground, supporting himself with his hands. Boom, his hand lost its balance and he fell to the ground trembling slightly and struggling. He knelt on the ground again. This simple action caused the wounds on the boy's body to open again. The pink flesh inside the scabbed scar blossomed, and blood oozed out along the scar, soaking the tattered clothes that were stained with blood, dirt and rust. Woof, woof woof, woof woof woof. The boy was like a walking corpse. His eyes were empty and lifeless. He was just a walking corpse. Humiliation, painful. The young man had lost consciousness. The pain everywhere made him numb. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind: go home. He wants to go home. Go home. I want to go home. Tisk. How boring. Seeing the young man in such an embarrassed state, Hideo suddenly felt bored and lost interest in an instant. He gently let go of his fingers. Puff, looking at the steamed bun that fell to the ground and was covered with a thick layer of dust. He seemed to have found something that could make him happy. A wicked smile appeared on the corners of his mouth, and he raised his feet that were covered in mud and dust. Pad after being trampled and crushed, the originally plump white flour bun suddenly became a shapeless gray cake covered with dust, with footprints of the Black Knife on it. The boy still knelt on the ground with a vicious look in his eyes. Hideo raised a smile full of evil taste and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Oops, how could I accidentally drop it on the ground? I'm so sorry. But it should still be edible, don't you think? After all, you haven't eaten for 2 days. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha, Hideo. And the man next to him laughed and left the room filled with a foul smell. Bang, the iron door was closed, and only a faint light came into the room from the small window of the iron door. As if it was the only light left in the darkness, the boy's eyes were numb. He slowly raised his head and walked forward. With the help of the light, he groped for the ash cake in the darkness. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they could not moisten his dry lips. Behind him, on the wall, there were 2 characters carved in blood. In the darkness, Yuli only had one spiritual support in his heart. I want to go home, go home. Boom, hiss, up. Hideo was kicked to the ground like a sandbag. The severe pain made him curl up involuntarily, like a cooked river shrimp. Idiot. I asked you to teach that kid a lesson, not to kill him. Damn it, I'm counting on that kid to make money. What else can you do to me now? Fuck, hiss. Hideo struggled to stand up. The boss didn't hold back the kick, and it hit him hard, making him almost vomit his lunch. Just like a wounded hyena, he only dared to be violent and cruel to the weak. Hideo's eyes were vicious as he glanced at the young man who had died at some point in time. Cursing in my heart, damn bastard. However, when he raised his head and looked at the man, a fawning smile immediately appeared on his face. That expression was so flattering and ugly that there was not a trace of ferocity at all. Boss, I didn't expect this little thing to be so fragile. I didn't do much to it. This is all my fault. I am willing to be punished. Please forgive me this time. He was just about to find an excuse to defend himself, but when he met the icy eyes of the man in front of him, he felt like he was falling into an ice cellar. The chill instantly ran through his spine. He was so scared that he immediately changed his words and admitted his mistake. At this time, Hideo was sweating profusely. He knelt on the ground like a stray dog, begging for the man's forgiveness. The skinny monkey who was smoking nearby turned his attention from the corpse on the ground and began to speak for Hideo. After all, he was an old man who had followed a boss for such a long time. But this time he made such a big mistake. Even if the boss wanted to forgive him, he had to find a way out for him. He knows everything about this matter. Boss, calm down. The most urgent thing is to get the kid's family to send the money over before they find out he's dead. Besides, he's dead, so what's the big deal? We can still get money from quack doctors. I took a look and found that Hideo was quite capable. At least his internal organs were not damaged. After saying that, the skinny monkey took a deep puff, and the cigarette burned rapidly, leaving only a cigarette butt in an instant. He threw the cigarette butt in his hand on the ground, blew out a smoke ring, and showed a sly smile to the man. These words seemed to ease the expression of the man they called the boss a little. After thinking for a moment, he raised his head and glared at Hideo fiercely, the anger in his eyes still not subsided. If you mess this up again, you'll be in trouble. Yes, boss. Don't worry. I'll go and urge them right away. With a parrot here, I guarantee that the boy's family won't be able to hear any clues. Hey. Hideo nodded repeatedly, with a little anxiety. He knew his boss's temper best. If this matter was messed up, it was estimated that more than just the kid would appear on the quack doctor's operating table. Thinking of this, Hideo felt a little shudder. No, this time I must keep a close eye on the parrot. Wow. The cold touch spread quickly from the cheek like an electric current, sweeping across the whole body. In an instant Yuli felt her whole body go limp and her eyelids felt as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. I struggled to open my eyes. The dark abandoned factory was no longer in front of me, and the air was no longer filled with a stench of excrement and waste. The sky was gloomy and the dark clouds seemed like they would fall to the ground at any time. The dripping rain was like a bead curtain, making it difficult for him to see the scenery in the distance. I'm alive, you. Lee seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help shivering. He opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse like sandpaper, and the raindrops running down his face soaked his lips. Lee couldn't help but look up, looking at the rain that had been falling for who knows how long. His heavy body made him exhausted, and the stinging feeling of raindrops dripping into his eyes made him close his eyes involuntarily. Still alive, Lee still didn't understand why she was still alive. His memory still stayed at the moment when he lost consciousness. The two devil-like men dropped half a crush bun and left the room filled with a foul smell. At that time, I was moving with difficulty, using the light to search for the dust-covered steamed buns in the darkness. Before this, he hadn't eaten for 2 days. If they hadn't been afraid that he would starve to death, he probably wouldn't have even been able to drink a sip of water. Unfortunately, he had been in poor health since childhood. Although his family took him to see many doctors, he was diagnosed with congenital muscular dystrophy and could only recover slowly. For this reason, as the only son in the family and the only child of this generation, he can be said to be loved by the whole family and is the apple of everyone's eye. He was trying so hard to live, no matter what. As a result, he died in the abandoned factory due to his weak body enduring the pain all over his body as if being tortured. Lee struggled to raise his arms as heavy as lead, trying to stop the cold rain that was pouring down on the earth. He blinked his eyes and finally opened them again. But the moment he saw his arm, Lee stood there in a daze as if struck by lightning. The arm was as pale as paper and so thin that it seemed like it would break at the touch. There were no bruises or wounds from being beaten, and there was no pain in the lungs when breathing. This is not his body at all. Lee's eyes widened, and he was unable to react for a moment. He ignored the pain all over his body and struggled to stand up in the drizzling rain with his eyes wide open. He carefully examined his body, as if confirming something, over and over again. With panic and doubt, refusing to give up for a long time, he stood in the rain like a fool, letting the cold rain mercilessly hit his cheeks and letting the biting chill penetrate into his bones slowly. Even the last bit of warmth in his heart disappeared. This body really isn't his. This was a child even younger than him, a child who had been malnourished for a long time and was even thinner than him, as if he could be blown down by a gust of wind. It's hard to tell his exact age, but long-term malnutrition made Lee feel dizzy after just standing for a while. This not only shocked Lee, he felt that his long-standing outlook on life had been hit unprecedentedly at this moment. A name flashed through Lee's mind, and it seemed that it was the original owner of this body. Lee. So, where is this? Confusion flashed in his eyes, and Lee stood on the rain blankly, muttering to himself. His mind seemed to be filled with a large lump of Westlake vinegar fish and durian sauce mixed with number 42 concrete and pasta, which made him feel stinging for a moment. But the aches all over his body and the cold feeling of the rain hiding his body kept reminding him that this was not a dream, but the real world. Lee woke up and became a different person. The sky was as gloomy as a block of lead, as if it was about to collapse. It was cloudy and rainy, and the dense rain threads intertwined into a dull net. The damp and cold wind roared like a demon, carrying with it the thick moisture, which lashed him fiercely like a whip, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. It can be predicted that the rain will not stop in the short term. Judging from Yuli's current physical condition, he might breathe his last in the rain within a day. No. I want to live. I want to go home. I want to go back alive, Lee screamed wildly in her heart. The strong desire to survive was like a burning flame, making him suddenly realize that he was in an extremely dangerous situation. Having experienced death once, the fear of death surged into his heart like a raging tide and reached its peak. Those who say that people who have died once will not care about life and death are simply nonsense. The shadow of death is chasing him like a ghost, constantly urging him to find a place to hide. He was in a village that looked dilapidated, with houses scattered around like abandoned toys and far apart from each other. He was lost in this strange land and couldn't tell where he was. However, at this moment, seeing these traces of humanity finally brought a sense of relief to his heart. However, this place had obviously been ravaged by robbers or wars, with broken walls everywhere, like a ruin. Although the dozen or so houses here and there still barely maintained their general shape, they were also full of traces of being smashed and destroyed. The charred buildings fell to the ground helplessly like defeated soldiers, washed mercilessly by the rain. Strands of water stains with black marks meandered across the ground like poisonous snakes. The village was deserted. Perhaps the villagers had already received the news in advance and fled from this disaster area. Looking up at the gloomy sky, Lee dragged his heavy feet and staggered towards the nearest thatched house, which was relatively well preserved. The eaves of the thatched house extended outward like a mother's arm, providing him with a temporary shelter from the freezing cold rain. Leaning against a cold wall, Lee felt confused. Only then did he begin to look around. As far as the eye can see, the eaves of all the houses extend outward like a guard's shield, and the ground is paved with a layer of stone bricks that are higher than the surrounding ones, as if telling the history of this place being invaded by rain all year round. However, this place does not seem peaceful. Lee silently observed the surroundings. The sound of the rain, the sound of the thatch being hit by raindrops, and the rustling of leaves. In this deathly silent atmosphere, there was a lack of a trace of human fireworks. This is actually a lifeless village. Yuli's face was as pale as paper and she felt extremely confused about the future. Suddenly, a dazzling white light flashed in the sky, accompanied by a deafening thunder rumbling. Gollum Yuli's lips were as dry as the desert. The lips that had just been moistened became extremely dry again in an instant. Hunger, dryness, cold, fear, all kinds of feelings flooded into his mind like a flood breaking through a dam. This completely looted village was covered in traces of burning, smashing and looting, and the villagers who had fled early were nowhere to be found. This small, haphazard village became eerily quiet as the sky gradually grew gloomy. Without even a single light on, there was no moon or stars in the sky. All the light was ruthlessly blocked by thick dark clouds, and the sky was gray and gloomy. The freezing wind pierced through his wet, dripping, tattered clothes like countless swords, stinging his paper-thin bones. Lee looked at the gradually darkening world, as if endless darkness was once again covering him. He curled up in the corner, his body shaking constantly, and endless fear swept over him again like a surging wave. Chapter 2: Killing to Survive. The sky seemed to be stained black by spilled ink, weighing heavily on the earth. The endless darkness was like a huge net, tightly wrapping everything in it. The sounds of wind and rain mixed together, like a thrilling piece of horror music, which made people shudder. The bone-chilling frost mercilessly corroded every inch of Yuli's skin, bringing waves of pain. This should have been the home for human beings to survive, but at this moment, the sense of security that Lee once felt was gradually disappearing. In this endless darkness and cold, fear of the unknown often erodes people's hearts, especially for the young Lee. This fear is infinitely magnified as night falls. The whole village is shrouded in a strange and gloomy atmosphere. Lee held the faint light tightly in his hand and moved forward step by step fearfully. At this moment, his whole body was soaked by the heavy rain. The biting cold was like a demon, continuously attacking from all directions, madly devouring the little warmth left in his body. Suddenly, Yuli's hand touched a texture that was completely different from the wooden house. He stopped and nervously stretched out his little hand covered with the black ash, groping for the paper-covered window in front of him. He gritted his teeth and mustered up the courage to push open the window and climb into the house. However, the moment he exerted force, there was a crisp hiss sound, and the fragile window shattered instantly. The sharp wooden thorn pierced into Yuli's palm like a ferocious fang. A sharp pain came over him and he involuntarily retracted his injured finger. After a short rest, Lee tried to pull out the wooden thorns, but they were like solid shields embedded in the windows. Motionless, he was so tired that he didn't even have the strength to break the wood. Drops of water slid down Yuli's cheeks, blurring his vision. He couldn't tell whether they were tears or rain. His lips turned blue and his body grew colder and colder, as if wrapped in ice. Helplessly, Yuli could only continue to grope forward in the dark. The pitch-black night made it difficult for him to move forward, and he might fall if he was not careful. After a long time, he finally found the main door to the house. As night fell, the rain outside became heavier and heavier. The raindrops hit the gravel table violently, splashing on Yuli's legs, bringing waves of coldness rumbling. Suddenly, a huge pale arc of lightning streaked across the night sky, instantly illuminating the entire world. This is a door with strange pictures of gods pasted on it, perhaps to pray for peace. However, this ancient wooden door had been smashed open. Half of it was tilted and half closed, as if opening its arms to Yuli. The other half fell to the ground, with mud marks remaining on it. Perhaps the gods will not protect the suffering. With a grin, Yuli seemed to be laughing silently. God? Buddha. He had been weak since childhood, and his family had prayed to countless gods and Buddhas and donated countless silver and money for him. Even during the time he was kidnapped, he prayed devoutly, hoping to escape from the abyss. Oh, faith! With the help of the light of lightning, Yuli looked around the house. This was not a house at all, but a dilapidated rural wooden house. Tables, chairs and benches that had been smashed to pieces were lying all over the ground, as if they were crying silently too. The house was in a mess, with traces of vandalism everywhere. Yuli's heart instantly sank, and she no longer had any hope for this exploration. However, he did not give up. He picked himself up and began to explore the house carefully while groping. With the help of occasional flashes of lightning, Yuli finally found a box of matches and some charcoal near the pots and pans against the wall. This was simply a ray of light in the darkness. He held these treasures in his hands as if they were treasures, moved a little away from the door, and lit a match in a relatively sheltered corner. The charcoal fire was ignited instantly, and the blazing flames illuminated the entire corner, warming Yuli's almost desperate heart. The scorching flames made Yuli feel extremely comfortable, as if she had found an oasis in the desert. He knew very well that making a fire in such a strange and unknown place was an extremely dangerous and irrational thing to do, but he had no choice. If he doesn't light a fire to keep warm tonight, given his current physical condition, he might not be able to survive this cold night. As the fire rose, Yuli took off her wet clothes without hesitation, put them on the relatively intact wooden stool nearby, and dried them in the blazing fire. Wearing wet clothes for a long time will inevitably lead to illness, and getting sick in such a harsh environment means that the risk of death will increase exponentially. Surrounded by light and warmth, Yuli's fear gradually dissipated in the light of the fire. He roughly searched the house and found a dusty pickled fish only the size of a palm in the corner of the broken rice jar. Apart from this, there is nothing else to fill my stomach. Fortunately, however, he unexpectedly found some earthenware utensils for cooking and a jar of water that was only half full. Perhaps the robbers also needed water to quench their thirst, so the water jar was spared from damage. The house was in a mess. Obviously it had been hastily looted. There were traces of arson and wanton destruction everywhere, but what was surprising was that there was no corpse or blood on the ground, and there was almost no food left for Yuli to eat. Seeing this, Yuli became alert. He thought that this place might have been unstable to begin with, and the people had long been accustomed to being alert at all times and being prepared to flee at any time. However, the situation must have been extremely urgent and hasty, so that they had no time to even check and search, let alone take the ironware away. After all, considering the living environment of this family, if the situation was not extremely urgent, they would not easily abandon important materials such as ironware. Yuli couldn't help but feel confused at this moment, because he could not find any trace of electrical equipment. Even all the furnishings inside and outside the house were very different from the modern society in his memory, as if two completely different eras were forcibly separated. This feeling became stronger and stronger, making him confused and puzzled. Where on earth is this place? Staring blankly at the fire, Yuli looked dazed. Why did he appear here alive when he was clearly dead, and live in another person's body? Is he traveling through time? A rich aroma of fish soup wafted into his nose, like a gentle hand, gently patting Yuli's cheek, pulling him back to reality from his trance. He silently put the salted fish into the hanging pot, added some clean water from the tank, and then waited quietly. Although Yuli is still a young child, he is very adaptable. However, when the aroma of the fish soup entered his nostrils, the deep longing for his family surged into his heart like a flood that broke through a dam, and could not be stopped. Tears rolled down his eyes like pearls from a broken string. She curled up tightly, hugged her legs, and sobbed softly, as if she wanted to cry out all the loneliness and longing. I don't know how much time had passed, but Yuli finally cried herself to exhaustion. She wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes, collected a small wooden bowl from around, and carefully scooped up a bowl of fish soup. The soup was clear and transparent, with a slight layer of oil stains and wisps of white mist rising. Yuli saw her own thin face in this light fish soup, fighting back the rumbling hunger. I blew gently at the fish soup, trying to cool it down a little. Before long, he couldn't hold back his hunger any longer, and regardless of whether the fish soup was hot or not, he tilted his head back and drank it all in one gulp. The hot soup slid down his throat, irritating him so much that he couldn't help coughing. A burning sensation spread from his mouth to his throat, and the scalding sensation made him breathe heavily. The worn-out wooden bowl with scratches all over it in his hand suddenly lost balance and fell heavily to the ground in an instant. The soup splashed everywhere, turning into countless tiny droplets that fell all over the ground, and a faint smell of fish soup spread. Yuli grimaced due to the burns, but still endured the pain. Feeling the remaining burning sensation in her mouth and the heat on the back of her hands, tears welled up in her eyes again, blurring her vision. However, this time he did not burst into tears like usual, but just silently wiped away the tears that had not yet condensed into beads with the back of his hand. Bending down and picking up the bowl that was half broken, Yuli looked at it thoughtfully for a while, then scooped another half bowl of hot soup. This time, Yuli carefully fished out the salted fish that had long been shriveled and tasteless, stared at it for a moment, left the tail part in the bowl, and put the rest back into the pot. Picking up the bowl, he drank the delicious fish soup in small sips, while carefully savoring the only remaining piece of fish tail. This piece of salted fish in the stamp corner may no longer be edible, but Yuli has no other choice. Every bite he swallowed tasted slightly bitter, but the warmth in his stomach made him reluctant to waste a single bite. After a moment, Yuli stopped and wiped the tears that kept oozing from the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. She bit the fish tail tightly and chewed it with all her strength, letting the strong fishy smell spread in her mouth as the last drop of fish soup went down her throat. The feeling of fullness made Yuli feel unprecedented satisfaction at this moment. He was confused and even frightened by what was happening before his eyes. Shaking his head, he didn't have the energy to think about these things right now. His first goal now was to survive, and then find a way home. The many questions were like steel needles piercing his head, making him dizzy and painful. He has been fighting against illness since he was young. Although he is the favorite of the family, his family is very strict with him. According to his family, only strict requirements can enable him to develop a strong body. Although the fact is that it is useless as for the ending, it didn't seem to have much impact on Yuli, but it made his temperament a little tougher. Although this body was malnourished, it did not seem as bad as imagined. After eating and drinking, Yuli leaned tiredly against the fire. The mental and physical exhaustion made him feel sleepy, and it seemed as if he would swallow him whole. Not long after, Yuli felt his eyelids becoming heavier and heavier, his consciousness gradually became blurred, and he finally fell into deep sleep. The next day, Yuli was awakened by gusts of cold wind, and the cold feeling woke him up from his sleep. Feeling the extremely cold surroundings, he was shivering all over, and hurriedly put on the clothes that he had placed by the fire last night to dry, which were now completely dry. I stood up and looked outside, only to see that the sky was still gloomy and the rain was falling heavily, with no sign of stopping. Gilulu, a low bowel sound suddenly sounded. I touched my stomach and it began to protest. The nutrients provided by the small fish he ate yesterday were far from meeting the needs of his body's growth and could only temporarily satisfy his hunger. He smashed the wooden furniture in the room, found some straw and twigs to light a bonfire, and drank the little remaining fish soup. Chapter 3. Encountering two ninjas. They came to me. The two people who witnessed this scene not far away were somewhat surprised and astonished that the child actually chose to treat the black dog as food. Haha, that's really interesting. Judging from the child's figure, he was no more than 5 or 6 years old. If he was a ninja, such a thing would not surprise him, but he was just a country child. Not only that, Orochimaru also noticed that the child was still holding the stone that killed the black dog in his hand, and he was even holding it very tightly. Obviously, he had realized that this place was not necessarily very safe, so he held the stone that had just been used as a weapon in his hand. Before that, he didn't have anything that could be called a weapon. It's just like, yes, at this moment, the child seemed to have adapted to this place and grown up suddenly. Orochimaru had the idea of bringing the child back to the village. To be more precise, he suddenly wanted to train the child, if Rope Tree could be more careful. Thinking of this, a hint of sadness flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. As Tsunade's younger brother, his disciple, and the young master of Konoha, He died from a ridiculous explosive tag. Since then, Orochimaru's understanding of life has become more profound. Life is so fragile, only by living can there be hope, only by being cold-blooded can one ensure his own safety. He suddenly felt a little admiration for this child. However, although the war is over on the surface, the atmosphere between the villages is still tense, and there are still spy ninjas active on the borders of various countries. Is it appropriate to bring an outsider back at this time? Orochimaru, this child, standing in the rain, his cold snake eyes stared straight at Yuli. If such a child could not become one of his own, then he would have to destroy him. Looking at the child with the same hair color as Naoki, Tsunade felt a little bit reluctant for a moment. She understood that the child's behavior just now attracted the attention of Orochimaru, and she also understood that Orochimaru had already wanted to kill the child. If at the beginning Orochimaru just didn't want to see a child barely surviving in this world, now he had already entered Orochimaru's sight, and he remembered this child. Yuli, who was walking towards the house, suddenly felt a chill on his back. Someone was looking at him with malicious eyes. Suddenly, his hair stood on end, and he turned around abruptly to look in the direction of the gaze. Who is it? Seeing the person coming, Yuli's heart was filled with wild alarm. He felt extremely threatened, and this mentality directly affected his performance. He looked vigilantly at the man and woman who were less than 50 meters away from him, especially the man on his left, who was immediately put on the danger list by him. The sky was extremely gloomy, and the thick dark clouds seemed to be about to fall down at any moment, making Yuli feel extremely depressed. Rumbling, white light flashed, thunder roared across the sky. The instantaneous light reflected on the faces of Yuli and the other two, making their faces pale. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The raindrops that fell on the straw raincoat formed a line and fell into the embrace of the ground. Who my dear sir, what can I do for you? Bending down, Yuli's body was trembling slightly, and the bloody smell of the black dog's corpse abandoned behind him drifted into his nose continuously. It's terrifying. There's absolutely no way to compete with these two people. There is no escape. Yuli's body has already given feedback, and there is no way to resist. Gollum. Suddenly, Yuli heard a sound in his stomach, but he didn't care at all at this moment. It really is the same hair as his, even smaller, rope tree, Orochimaru. And Tsunade didn't understand what Yuli said, but his wet hair made them fall into memories. Sorry, sir, I didn't understand what you said. Could you please say it again? Haha, what a strange language. This is not the native language of the Rain Country. Tsunade, this kid is very interesting. I suddenly want to take him back. Are you sure? Why not? A child with the same hair color as Rope Tree, a child who is much colder blooded and knows how to survive than Rope Tree. Aren't you curious, Rope Tree? Seeing his companions fall into silence, Orochimaru looked with interest at the little devil not far away, who had a flattering look on his face but carefully hid the stone behind his back. Hey, kid, come here. In Tsunade's eyes, the little ghost in front of him and Rope Tree are becoming more and more similar. Unfortunately, if Rope Tree could be more cautious, haha, what's the point of thinking about these things now? Whatever you want, I don't care about you. Jiraiya did this, and now you are doing the same. Enough is enough. Looking at Yuli, who had the same hair color as his brother, Tsunade scratched her hair irritably and simply decided not to care about these trivial matters anymore. Just let them be. With their status, it would not be difficult for them to bring a few children back to the village. Walking forward step by step, Yuli's face was full of flattery, and he showed the advantages of a child, just like a good boy. Unfortunately, due to lack of nutrition, his face was pale, and he was slightly hunched, looking particularly humble. The days of being kidnapped taught him what humility and flattery are. Little ghost, do you think you are worth living, sir? I really don't understand what you are saying. Lee moved his lips slightly, feeling somewhat desperate. He couldn't communicate with others in the same language, and he couldn't even humble himself to please others, let alone understand what the other party wanted. Tsunade, if this child can withstand my murderous aura, then take him back. Just consider it fate. How do you think? Turning around, Orochimaru's golden eyes stared at Yuli calmly. Yuli felt cold all over, as if being stared at by a poisonous snake. Little ghost, even though you don't understand what I'm saying, if you want to survive, just bear with it. In this world, life is very fragile. Looking up, although Yuli didn't understand what Orochimaru was saying, looking at his cold expression and Tsunade, who was still distracted beside him, Yuli knew that something seemed to have happened. Boom! Orochimaru released the cold murderous aura without any scruples, and Yuli almost fell to his knees without noticing. At the moment of falling forward, Yuli supported himself on the ground with his hands, barely holding up his body. Invisible steel knives were hanging on Yuli's body, and his whole body was trembling. He raised his head firmly, and sweat kept oozing out of his forehead. He saw Orochimaru stretched out his hand, as if waiting for Yuli's call. Is that so? Under Orochimaru's increasingly powerful aura, Yuli only felt that his vision was becoming increasingly blurred, his heart seemed to be tied by a rope, and the blood flow became slow. It's so cold, Dad, Mom, I'm a little homesick. In a trance, Yuli suddenly found that everything around her had changed. She was standing at the door of her house with a vermilion door wide open. Her grandparents were making dumplings inside, and her parents were cooking in the kitchen. Hearing the noise coming from the door, the whole family came to the door together. It's Lele, come in quickly. Lee, why have you become thinner again? Who bullied you? Grandma will help you vent your anger. You have to take good care of yourself when you're out there. Eat breakfast and don't sleep too late. Grandpa. Grandma. I miss you so much. Lee's eyes became moist, and he couldn't stop the tears from flowing down. He took one step forward after another, but found that his feet were like a quagmire and he couldn't move forward even one step. His expression became panicked. Why? How could this happen? No. Don't leave me. No. In a blink of an eye, when Yuli looked up again, everything in front of her became blurry, and the sound lingering in her ears became farther and farther away, more and more erratic, and less real. Fake. Everything is fake. Yuli struggled and tried desperately to lift her feet, but she was caught off guard and lost her balance. She fell forward and fell heavily to the ground. The mud in the quagmire wet Yuli's hair, and her eyes became blurry, alternating between darkness and reality. Her feet felt like they were filled with lead, and no matter how hard she pounded them, she couldn't stand up. Her heart beat slower and slower, and she felt her body getting colder and colder. She was suppressed, her eyes were bloodshot, her teeth were clenched, and blood was flowing from the corners of her mouth. Everything in front of him slowly disappeared until the last ray of light left Yuli's sight. Dark, silence, lonely. Are you going to die? Haha, I really can't accept this. Curled up in a ball, I let the tears flow down my cheeks and returned to the quagmire due to gravity. The coldness swept over my body, and the curled up posture could not bring me any warmth. I'm so cold, it's so dark here. I want to go home. Looking at Yuli, who was half kneeling on the ground with his head drooping weakly, Orochimaru and Tsunade did not show any impatience. As long as the child did not completely lie down, they would be patient and wait. The thing snakes lack the least is patience. There was also some anticipation in Tsunade's eyes. This child is somewhat similar to Shangshu, and this child is like two extremes of Shangshu. Live on, just as I missed the rope tree. Chapter 4. Do I have the right to live? In this silent world, Yuli curled up her body tightly, as if she wanted to hide herself completely. However, endless loneliness and fear pounced on him mercilessly like a group of ferocious demons. Woo. Who can come and save me? After all, even though Yuli tried very hard to remain calm in front of Orochimaru and the others, he was ultimately just a young and ignorant child. He should have enjoyed a carefree childhood, but unfortunately he met with misfortune. After being captured, he was tortured for more than 10 days, and now, having just traveled to this strange world, he has once again fallen into a desperate situation. For a child like this, the pressure Yuli has to bear is beyond what ordinary people can imagine. He has tried his best to deal with the difficulties before him, and it can be said that he has done a really great job. Yes, how can we make such harsh demands on a child? However, sometimes, fate will not show mercy to you and let you go easily just because you are a child. Tick, tick. There were slight sounds, sometimes like the sound of water drops falling to the ground, and sometimes like the sound of someone walking slowly. The sounds were intermittent and seemed to never stop. With every sound, Yuli's heart beat faster and her nerves were stretched to the extreme. Hearing the sound that suddenly appeared in this endless dark world, Yuli's body suddenly stiffened, and the violent convulsions suddenly stopped. His body began to tremble uncontrollably, like leaves in the wind, which came from the fear of the unknown. Yuli slowly raised her head, her eyes revealing an unspeakable confusion and fear. What is that? Suddenly, Yuli opened his eyes wide, trying hard to see the scene clearly. Gradually, a vague figure appeared in his sight. The figure was wearing a pair of worn flip-flops, and her hair was tightly wrapped with large curling irons, which made her look very strange. She had a crumpled cigarette stuck in her ear and a half-drunk bottle of beer in her hand. Although her body was covered in stains and her clothes looked a little worn, her original beauty and elegance could still be seen due to the distance. Yuli could not see the woman's face clearly, but the moment he saw her, a strong emotion surged in his heart. It was a feeling of déjà vu, as if they had met each other a long, long time ago. The feeling was so real that Yuli almost suffocated she, or rather, him. This difference, filled with a sense of separation, made Yuli inexplicably feel endless admiration and attachment in his heart. When he saw the girl for the first time, he felt like a lost drop of water that finally found its own ocean, or like a child who had been away from home for a long time and returned to his mother's arms. Who are you? Yuli opened his mouth and tried to make a sound. However, due to long-term torture, his throat had become hoarse and his voice sounded unusually low. He was really too tired. Obviously, he was just a child. Yule, I'm sorry for causing you trouble. The woman's voice was gentle and kind, like a spring breeze blowing through Yuli's heart, bringing a touch of warmth. That feeling always gave Yuli a motherly feeling, making him subconsciously calm down and no longer afraid. Human emotions are so intense that they seem to be able to reach through the endless void and wake me up from my deep sleep. Her voice was soft and ethereal, as if it came from another world. The boundary between fantasy and reality is gradually blurring, but planet Aquamarine itself is too fragile. Desires are not completely useless. It can even be said that it is precisely because of the desires in the human heart that illusions can blend with reality, and I was born because of this. However, when everything reaches its limit, it will turn into its opposite. When desire becomes rampant, everything will be destroyed. All life, and even the entire Aquamarine planet, will disappear in the dark and lonely universe. Her tone became deeper and deeper, with an inexplicable sadness in it. However, you who were born in this era are different. You are born with the light of spiritual wisdom, and you carry my protection. Under the guidance of the light of spiritual wisdom and the interweaving of the threads of fate, you finally came to this world. Having said this, she paused slightly. Just because of this, am I going to endure such endless pain and torture? You. Lee suddenly interrupted her words. His emotions were so agitated that he could hardly control himself. At this moment, he completely forgot what the woman in front of him had said before, and only the resentment and indignation after being tortured remained in his heart. He didn't care about those messy things. He didn't want to know and was too lazy to know. He just wanted an answer. Why? Why me? Why should I bear all the pain and suffering? When he heard the woman in front of him say these words, he felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless black hole. He felt like an abandoned child who was pushed into the abyss by the person closest to him since childhood. The so-called wisdom light has made him extremely weak. Even a few breaths with a little force would cause heart and lung pain. It also made him unable to endure the scorching sun. What kind of good luck is this kind of favor? Instead, he suffered endless torture. If that's the case, then what's the point of this favor? At this moment, Yuli's eyes were red, tears kept rolling in his eyes, and his face was full of grievances like a child who was bullied. No, he was just a child. Is it really something I did wrong? Looking at Yuli's pitiful appearance, the woman standing in front of him showed a hint of sadness in her eyes, which was then replaced by determination. She knew in her heart that all these were sacrifices that had to be made. Sorry, kid, someone has to sacrifice, even me. He is the embodiment of the will of all mankind, and he constantly bestows favor and protection on the destiny of batch after batch of children with the light of spiritual wisdom. Because they are born with the light of spiritual wisdom, coupled with illusory blessings, there will be a gap between their bodies and reality. This is reflected in the fact that these children are weak and sickly since childhood, or have various physical defects. This also makes them more likely to be led by fate and more likely to encounter that mysterious and critical moment, the critical point where fantasy and reality blend and collide with each other. At this moment, they seem to be led by the hand of fate and broke into strange worlds without any warning. Some people may gradually adapt to the new environment and integrate into it. Others may disappear from the world quietly without even leaving a trace. However, there will always be some people who, when the longing for their hometown and loved ones deep in their hearts surges like the tide and reaches an uncontrollable peak, it will become a strong signal, like a bright lighthouse, guiding them and helping them to accurately locate where they are in this world. The evolution and growth of the world are often accompanied by bursts of pain. But his deep love for Yuli has not wavered. Although his heart was full of contradictions and struggles, reason always prevailed and became the core criterion for his behavioral decisions. His concern and closeness are not to individuals, but to the entire human community. However, It must be admitted that the foundation of the aquamarine planet is too weak. For people like Yuli, the power that he can give is quite limited. At least when they have not come into contact with the power system of this world, it can only slightly improve their physical fitness, but that's all. Finally, he stepped forward, hugged Yuli tightly in his arms, and whispered softly, sorry, as the embodiment of planet Aquamarine. Every life on planet Aquamarine is like his own child. Although the law of survival of the fittest in nature is not within his consideration, it is also difficult for him to let his own children die in vain. But now, he did this. He knew very well that this was the only viable solution, and that world needed an infusion of new power as the will of the world. He should not have too many emotional fluctuations. However, as the saying goes, success or failure depends on Zio. He was born out of the vast and endless emotions of human beings. He is born close to the human race and is born with extremely powerful power, but precisely because of this, every time he takes the initiative to harm the human race, he himself will also suffer severe trauma. If this action was not beneficial to the future of mankind, he would probably have already fallen apart and turned to ashes in the internal conflict in an instant. Yuli suddenly felt her body warm, as if a close relative was hugging her tightly in his arms. He couldn't help but sob softly, and slowly raised his hands to hug the woman in his arms unexpectedly. At this moment, he was shocked to find that the body of the woman who was hugging him had become slightly transparent. All dimensional worlds have their own restraining force. Perhaps you will slowly forget the memory of Aquamarine and slowly become a living being in this world. I will fix the anchor point you cast for you. So, what is your anchor point? Go home? Home? Stay alive. As for staying alive, only then can I become strong and go back. I must stay alive. Live? Well, live well, my child. I will wait for your return. Come on. The voice faded away, becoming more and more ethereal. In a moment, Yuli watched helplessly as this woman, who had appeared before him at some point and filled him with such a sense of intimacy, turned into a transparent state, and with a bang, broke into pieces of butterflies that swarmed towards him. Countless pieces of information enveloped him, and gradually, Yuli's main consciousness fell into deep sleep. In the vast and boundless chaotic dimension, Aquamarine was like a cunning thief, quietly smuggling her children into a wealthy manner. However, the fates of these children were different. Some were unfortunately shot dead on the spot, some hid cleverly and were not noticed. Even worse, some were able to survive because of their deep friendships with the children in the manor. As long as the surviving children have not left, all the resources they have learned and gained here will remain in this manor. In a sense, this was a good thing for the owner of the manor. After all, no matter how this child who brought resources from another world developed in the future, it would benefit the manor greatly in the end. However, the final trick used by Hylangsing was like a mysterious key left for Yuli. When Yuli cultivates to a certain level, with this key, he will be able to open the small door specially opened for him on the Aquamarine Star, escape from the current world, and take away all the wealth he has gained here. However, this method can only be captured by Aquamarine when the signal sent by the beacon reaches its peak, and then it can transmit powerful power. And this power must be kept secret and cannot be caught by the owner of the manor, which is also a difficult task for Aquamarine. Anchor point. Stay alive. I want to live. Gradually, I regained consciousness. The darkness before my eyes receded like a tide. A slight chill flowed through my body, and I struggled to wipe away the rain that had entered my eyes. Yuli raised her head, raised the corners of her mouth, and forced a smile, taking one step after another under the murderous intent of Orochimaru. He used his hands and feet to crawl to his front with difficulty, leaving a long trail of mud behind him. Snap! With a slapping sound, the mud-covered hand clasped tightly with Orochimaru's. He raised his head. His eyes seemed to be twinkling with stars, and his dark brown pupils reflected Orochimaru's golden pupils. So, sir, do I have the right to live? For some reason, Orochimaru and Tsunade understood Yuli's words this time. Interesting little devil. Then, follow me, my little sir. Chapter 5. Back to the village. Then follow my steps, little sir. Haha, everything is getting interesting. Where is this? Dizzy and dazed, Yuli felt as if his head was hit hard by a heavy hammer. Before he lost consciousness, he only remembered the pair of golden pupils that were filled with coldness and like a poisonous snake. Here it is. His body ached unbearably, as if it had been kneaded and squeezed wantonly. Yuli struggled to stand up, looking around in confusion. Are you awake? Come, have some water. The Blonde woman next to him watched Yuli slowly sit up, with a slightly impatient expression on her face, and handed him a pot of water. What can she do? Orochimaru is a guy who does whatever he wants. I don't know what's in his brain. He only knows how to create trouble. Although she didn't understand what the woman meant, Yuli subconsciously took the kettle and drank from it in big gulps to moisten her already cracked lips. Only then did he have the energy to observe everything around him. As night falls, the stars twinkle. Yuli looks up, feeling the pain in her neck. Somehow, she feels that the sky full of stars seems a little strange. But, hasn't she been looking at the starry sky for 5 years? He lowered his head and sighed slightly, full of melancholy and sadness. It seems that I hit my head because of the war. After a moment's silence, Yuli managed to stand up, enduring the pain in his body, and bowed slightly to the woman in front of him and the black-haired man who was sitting nearby to rest. At least, if it weren't for these two people, I might have to survive in the wilderness of some deserted village, or even die in some unknown place. It's really troublesome because of the language barrier. Tsunade, how about you take care of this child? Tsunade looked at Orochimaru with astonishment as he said this, and a big well character appeared on his forehead. Roll. If you don't want to take it, forget it. However, this child does have an unusual physique. I really want to study him carefully. Orochimaru licked his lips slightly and looked at Yuli with an aggressive look. Yuli noticed the gaze staring at him and shuddered involuntarily. It seemed that the look in the man's eyes was too aggressive, making Yuli feel uneasy at this moment. Orochimaru suddenly felt an indescribable excitement, a joy from the bottom of his heart. This feeling was incomparably wonderful. He stared at Yuli, who stood up, his eyes shining. During the journey, that is, during the time when Yuli was unconscious, through his and Tsunade's examinations, they naturally had some understanding of Yuli's physical condition, super strong cell activity and recovery, as well as energy conversion. What a great talent! However, what makes Orochimaru and Tsunade curious is that this kind of body often has a huge demand for nutrition. Yuli's background can't even provide the nutrients needed for normal growth. How did he survive until now? Especially Yuli's heart, the vitality contained in it surprised Tsunade. A different language system, strong body recovery, super cell activity, vigorous vitality, calm mind, just the right age. You are truly a natural ninja seedling. So, can you grow into a towering tree? Orochimaru was whispering softly at the side. His voice was so faint that it seemed to float in the air at this time. The flames of the Second Ninja World War had just ended, and the village was devastated by the baptism of war and suffered heavy losses. As a disciple of the Third Hokage, Orochimaru knew very well that the village was in urgent need of all kinds of talents at this moment. He himself had grown up step by step from a commoner, and naturally had a unique and deep passion for the village. This is also the reason why he chose to bring Yuli back to the village. Yuli's young age became a key factor. If not, even though Yuli was gifted and had an extraordinary character, he would have found it difficult to escape the fate of becoming a victim at the end of this war. After all, teenagers have already formed a relatively clear worldview. Fortunately, Yuli is still small and there is more room and possibility for transformation. At least, if Yuli was really 10 years old, Orochimaru, or even the entire Konoha, would not gamble on this possibility at the age of 10. He already has his own thoughts. Fortunately, Yuli still has a chance to change his fate. Therefore, although Tsunade was slightly dissatisfied, she did not express her opposition explicitly. Of course, part of the reason is that even if she objects, Orochimaru may not listen. Orochimaru is not as docile as Jiraiya. Geniuses are always independent and unruly. He has his own personality and opinions. Let's go back to the village. We still have to deal with the old man's troublesome matter. It's really troublesome. You asked for this, you deserve it. Hi, Tsunade, when you see the old man, you can say that you saw this kid's hair and it reminded you of him. How about that? Get lost? Yuli followed the two of them silently, holding a large piece of meat in each hand. Since Orochimaru was planning to take Yuli back to Konoha, he naturally would not let him starve in such an unimportant place. I ate while walking and listened to the conversation between the two people in front of me. I didn't understand much anyway, so I just listened for fun and didn't lose out. Boom. What are you looking at, little brat? I hate you little brats the most. Who do you think you are? You should just stay in the village. Tsunade, what are you doing again? Thanks, cut. What's going on? It's all. Chapter 6. Return to Konoha and meet Danzo. Konoha, Hokage building. The sky is cloudless today, and the long-lost sunshine has brought some life back to the village. For the villagers, post-war reconstruction always seems busy and heavy at this time. Yuli was sitting in the lobby of the Hokage building, holding a portion of 3-color meatballs in one hand and a skewer in the other, trying hard to finish the delicious food because he couldn't speak the language. He didn't know why Orochimaru and the others brought him back. This place was much more prosperous than the village. In Yuli's memory, he had never seen such a prosperous place. After testing by Tsunade and Orochimaru, it was found that his body absorbed energy very quickly and had super strong cell activity, so Orochimaru and the others did not let Yulezu have any time to spare along the way. What surprised them the most was that Yuli could keep eating, and the food he ate was quickly transformed into vitality and stored in his body. Is that the child that Orochimaru-sama and Tsunade-sama brought back? I heard it was. It seems to have been brought back from the Rain Country. What's so special about it that you two adults would bring it back at this time? Who knows? But the two adults naturally have their own considerations. Why should we care so much? Choose the tasks quickly. We are almost too busy. It's really, hey. Here it comes. Are you too serious? Well, old man, this child will be in Konoha from now on. He will grow up to be the big tree that Konoha needs to support the future. I promise. Tsunade, what about you? That's what I meant. Tsunade, who was standing nearby, saw her teacher looking at her and couldn't help but sigh, but she still spoke. Who surrounded by smoke? Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes were full of spirit. He was the third Hokage of Konoha, and in front of him stood his most satisfied disciple. You know, I need to consider the safety of the village. He is still young and worth training. And seeing that he can't even speak the language, he doesn't have any hostility towards Konoha. Since he meets all the requirements in terms of talent, character, and age, why can't he become a member of the village? Orochimaru, are you serious, teacher? I am willing to be his guarantor. Subconsciously knocking the table with his pipe, looking at his disciple who refused to give in, Sarutobi suddenly felt relieved that his disciple had also grown up. That's right. How many people in the entire ninja world don't know the name of Konoha Langen? He was willing to believe in the judgment of his disciple. Besides, this child had become a member of the Hokage series from the moment he entered the village. In that case, why couldn't he do that? The will of fire was enough to make that child a loyal guardian of Konoha. Bring him in. Orochimaru, you agree, teacher? Boom. Sarutobi. I heard that Orochimaru brought back a child? Give him to me and I will give you a perfect ninja. Impossible, Danzo. Ninjas don't need emotions. Only by leaving it to me can he fully tap into his talents. Bonds are the best interpretation of the will of fire. Danzo, you are too extreme. Humph, is this the kid? Although he used questioning words, Danzo's tone was particularly affirmative. With a bang, the door of the Hokage's office was pushed open, and a figure full of aggressive aura rushed towards Sarutobi, causing Yuli, who was standing in the middle, to feel his heart jump. This person has deep darkness and malice in his heart. She was wearing a white lining with a monotonous black jacket, and her pair of eyes seemed so captivating that Yuli unconsciously shrank towards Tsunade. This look was so scary, he seemed to have seen it somewhere before. It was a person who gave him extreme fear. Who is it? Rubbing his temple, Yuli was very clear that he had never seen this man before. Feeling Yuli's retreating steps, Tsunade gently stroked his somewhat frizzy head, calming him with her actions, and pulled him to her side, while warning Danzo with her eyes not to go too far. Yuli was comforted by Tsunade and gave up the thoughts that were giving him a headache. Soon, this discomfort was forgotten as if it had never existed. Is this the child? He is indeed a good candidate. He looked Yuli up and down, as if he was looking at goods in the vegetable market, and his eyes made Yuli extremely uncomfortable. Danzo, you know I can't leave this child to, teacher. I think it's okay. What does it mean to silence a crowd of people with just one sentence? Orochimaru demonstrated this himself when these words came out. Not only Sarutobi and Tsunade were shocked, but even Danzo did not expect Orochimaru to speak for him, and gave him a puzzled but relieved expression as expected. I am the best candidate for Hokage. Hiruzen, you are already old, and even your disciples are beginning to oppose you. You should step down as soon as possible. Only I, Shimura Danzo, am the best candidate for the Hokage that everyone in Konoha is looking forward to. Before Danzo could continue his fantasy, Orochimaru's next words made his face fall, and the expressions of Sarutobi, Hiruzen and Tsunade became somewhat strange. Well, it's Orochimaru as expected. This kid can follow Danzo. or he can be brought into the root for training, but I will be his direct foster parent. At the same time, the teacher can enter the root from time to time to check on his training progress, including using the telescope technique to watch. The atmosphere always changes in an instant. At least Yuli didn't understand why the expressions of the people around him changed so much with just 2 sentences, making him tremble all over. Hey, please, I feel bad for not understanding what they are saying. You guys are still showing off your face here, right? Do you really think a sick cat won't show its power? Although in the eyes of Sarutobi Hiruzen and others, he is now just a kitten that can only meow, Orochimaru. Chapter 7, Entering the Roots, a win-win situation. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Sarutobi's eyes flashed with a gleam of brilliance. If he could insert the root for this reason, it seemed that it was not unacceptable. Now it was Danzo's turn to feel uncomfortable. Everything was going well. When he received the news that Orochimaru and his companions had brought a good seedling back to the village, he was thinking of putting pressure on Hiruzen to bring this seedling to the root and cultivate a useful tool for himself as a result. Orochimaru's words made him feel passive. Tsunade stood aside, gently comforting Yule. In fact, she was a little reluctant to hand Yule over to Danzo, but it had to be said that Konoha was xenophobic. If it weren't for this reason, Jiraiya wouldn't still be staying in the rain country to teach those children. If Orochimaru really cares about it and there is a teacher to monitor him at all times, perhaps this will be a good thing for Yuli. If I could integrate into the village, sighed. So she really hated these trivial matters. I really want to live a life of drinking and rolling dice every day. Thinking of this, the big hand that was stroking Yuli's head couldn't help but use a little more force, causing Yuli's already slightly curly hair to frizz up. Lee smacked her lips, raised her head and looked at Tsunade speechlessly. This elder sister was really enough, but it was a pity that she had no ability to resist at all. It was so annoying. After 2 days of getting along, Yuli had almost figured out the temperaments of the 2 men and knew that these little tempers would not make the other party angry. Naturally, he relaxed a little and was no longer as cautious as at the beginning. Danzo, if you agree to Orochimaru's request, I will agree to this matter. After pondering for a moment, Danzo looked deeply at Orochimaru with his dark pupils, then stretched out his scarred hand and waved to Yule. I agree, but I will only open up a part of it. You should know, Hiruzen, this is my bottom line. Seeing that Danzo had given in, Sarutobi's slightly weathered face also showed a smile, and he took out his pipe and took another deep puff. That's it, then. You and Orochimaru will train this child together, and I will observe his growth status from time to time. His face was a little gloomy, but at least this trip had achieved its purpose. He waved to Yuli. Little ghost, come with me, just like that. As Yuli kept looking back with every step he took, he was taken away from the Hokage's office by Danzo. I have to find someone to teach this kid how to speak and read. No, I even have to find someone to teach him how to speak. I am really impressed. Since when did I, the dignified Konoha Fukage, have to do these things? Am I Tuan Konoha's nanny kindergarten teacher Zhang? There is no need to say anything more, as the matter has been settled. Yule successfully integrated into Konoha and was no longer a civilian without identity. Orochimaru became Yule's direct guardian and got to experience what it was like to be an adult. Danzo successfully recruited a talented young man, strengthened the root and took another step towards becoming Hokage. Sarutobi successfully intervened in the root and satisfied the needs of a disciple. If more people win, it belongs to them. As for who loses? Of course no one loses. We are all civilized people. We make our own choices. As soon as Yuli arrived at the root, he was frightened by everything here. The environment was gloomy and terrifying, even scarier than the night in the Rain Kingdom forest. Everyone walked without making any sound, and some people wore strange masks on their faces, which was eerie and really creepy. I'm afraid I've been abducted into some dark underground organization. Lord Orochimaru, I don't want to stay here anymore. Danzo sat on the chair, tapping the table with his fingers. He was thinking about how to train Yule and brainwash him into the most loyal ninja of the root without leaving any trace, but this is indeed somewhat difficult, not to mention that Hiruzen would occasionally use the telescope technique for observing the women's bathing area to take a look here. Take Orochimaru for example. He likes to come here whenever he doesn't have a mission. He really thinks he is not the root, right? I'm so angry. What a shameless bunch of guys. That's fine, but what's the big deal about you, Tsunade, coming here every day? Why don't you just be a good Konoha princess, go to the hospital to get some treatment, or go to the casino to give some money? You just love to come to me, It's fine if you come, but you have to complain every time. Am I a mean person? Do you understand respecting elders? After all, I am also the disciple of the second generation, and I am your elder in terms of seniority. Who are you rolling your eyes at, Tsunade? If you don't know, you might think your Senju family has the bloodline of the Hyuga family. What a troublesome guy, but sometimes, even the darkest intentions can slowly become peaceful under the healing of time. Slowly, Danzo seemed to have some small changes, perhaps because of Yuli's existence, or perhaps because the old guy Sarutobi Hiruzen and Orochimaru and Tsunade ran to the root from time to time, but who can tell these things clearly? I was born in a secluded village. The language I speak is unique to my tribe and we are isolated from the outside world. People in the village are extremely long-lived, but that also makes it difficult for new life to be born. I am the only child born in recent years, and I have lived a happy life for 5 years. However, due to the war, his village was discovered by wandering ninjas and a massacre took place. That day, his father escorted him out of the village, but he was also discovered because of some noise he made accidentally. I must avenge my parents and grandparents. I must survive. This is the hope of the whole village. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed, and Yule had also been in the root for half a year. It must be said that Danzo was quite good to Yule and found the best tutor to teach Yule the language. All things are difficult at the beginning. Faced with a completely different language system, Yuli suffered for a long time before he finally learned the standard language of the outside world. At the same time, the Root Research Department prepared the most suitable nutritious meals for Yule based on his physique. Although the taste was never something Danzo considered, Yule had no way to resist. At least Yuli felt that no one would have an appetite for a grayish-white, sticky, semi-solidified substance. If anyone did, just ignore what he said. Danzo is also very good at training. After the devilish training, Yuli has learned the language system of the ninja world, and his physical fitness has also been greatly developed. Every time Tsunade comes, Yuli is the happiest, because Tsunade will bring him some delicious food. This is something Tsunade must bring every time since she witnessed Yuli's so-called nutritious meals. This child is really pitiful. Moreover, ever since she learned to speak, she always calls her sister, which makes Tsunade miss her a little, so I just accepted Yuli as my younger brother. Yes, Yuli still did not change his name. After learning to speak, the first thing he did was to choose his own name, Yule. This was also his way of expressing his longing for the village, and this made him, who is always extremely obedient in other matters, refute Danzo for the first time. After Yuli entered the root, due to the opening of some areas, Danzo had no choice but to transfer some projects to other places. At this time, Danzo felt a little regretful that he should not have forced to bring this child to the root half a year ago. You know, his original idea was just to train a talented ninja who would obey him and provide him with strength for his future election for Hokage. How could he suddenly change his mind? Hiruzen uses the telescope to watch the child every now and then. I don't know if this child is his illegitimate child. It's enough. And Orochimaru comes once every 1 or 2 days, saying that he has to fulfill his duty as Yuli's guardian, or maybe Hiruzen assigned you too few tasks. I haven't seen you teach him how to speak. I am also convinced because of Yuli, the progress of many projects is now extremely slow, and some are even at a standstill. Hey, this is the root of Konoha, where the darkness of Konoha sits. Do you still want to open it? This year, Yuli is 5 years old, and there is still half a year before she enters the ninja school. In fact, Yuli doesn't know exactly how old she is, and she only found out after a bone age test at the hospital today. Danzo suddenly told Yule that starting from tomorrow, he would begin to receive formal training, which made Yule seem a little excited. Finally, I can finally touch the power of this world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8: Basic Root Training. The next day, as soon as a little light appeared in the sky, Yuli was called out of bed. His eyes were a little sleepy, with a piece of eye booger hanging from the corner of his eye, making him look a little dazed. After half a year of nourishment, Yuli's figure is no longer as skinny as before, and now looks like a skeleton. Although he mainly relies on dietary supplements, he also has some physical training, which makes him look almost the same as a 7 or 8-year-old child. He was 1.2 meters tall, with thin muscles faintly visible under his clothes. His hair was no longer as spiky as before, but had become smoother. There is a sense of peace about her aura, and she is well behaved, obedient, and friendly. Coupled with Yuli's identity, this made him very popular among the roots. The root today is not as dark as it will be in later generations. After all, Sarutobi is not yet so foolish as to attack hard internally and be submissive externally. All the high-end combat forces in the village are there, and the war has just ended, so there is a lot of work to be done. Yuli also knew that she would start chakra training today, so she had no complaints about getting up so early in the morning. She put on her clothes obediently and trotted all the way to the training ground at the root. This is a training ground that belongs exclusively to Yuli. At this moment, only Orochimaru and Watanabe are there. Teacher, Uncle Quing, good morning. After greeting the two of them, Yuli stood obediently in front of them, waiting for today's practice. Orochimaru was the first to speak. What Yuli needs now is the basics. He is about to leave the village to carry out a mission and will not be back in a short time, so he came to see Yule specifically. The main force today is actually Watanabe next to him. Yule, you will start your ninja training from today. Before you become a ninja, I need you to think clearly about one thing. Why did you choose to become a ninja? Don't be in a hurry to tell me. Think about it slowly. I hope you can give me a satisfactory answer in the future. Okay, teacher. Orochimaru nodded slightly to Watanabe beside him and stepped aside. He had something else to do later and naturally would not stay here all the time. There was no other foreplay with Watanabe. He has always been a very steady person, otherwise he would not have been arranged by Danzo to be Yuli's enlightenment teacher. A large part of a ninja's power comes from chakra, which is a unique power produced by the perfect combination of the human body's spiritual energy and physical energy. It is also the energy source that allows a ninja to perform ninjutsu. Of course, your task today is not to learn those ninjutsu. Right now you don't have chakra, so the first thing you need to do is learn how to refine chakra. Seeing Yuli staring at him with his eyes reflective, Watanabe naturally knew what he was thinking and immediately poured a basin of cold water on him. You must be down to earth in everything you do. If you aim too high, you won't get far. As the young master of the root, what he should do most is to lay a solid foundation. After seeing Yuli calm down, Watanabe nodded. Your physical fitness is relatively good among your peers, but this is not enough. Now that your nutrition has been supplemented, you should start the physical training that you have been overdue for. What? I was stunned for a moment. Yuli thought that he could start learning ninjutsu today. Like I just told you, chakra is the product of the perfect fusion of spiritual energy and physical energy. Even if I tell you how to refine chakra now, without a solid foundation, it will only be a half-baked one. So, today's training task is to first conduct physical training, then learn hand seals and understand ninja weapons. Having said so much, let's get started. 2 hours later. Okay, take a half-hour break and start today's hand seal training. Sweat formed lines and dripped from Yuli's face. At this time, a large area of the ground was soaked. Yuli was doing horse stance, his whole body was shaking, but he kept persisting. He is actually not a very perseverant guy, but after going through so many things, Yuli seems to have realized that sometimes being weak is a kind of original sin. He didn't want to go through this kind of thing again. Becoming stronger had become an obsession for him. Only by becoming strong enough could he avoid being bullied and find clues to return home. After hearing what Watanabe said, Yuli trembled all over, as if the string was broken, and fell to the ground with a thud, breathing heavily. At this moment, he felt that his whole body was not his own, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. Feeling the aches all over his body, Yuli didn't say a word but just persisted silently. Watanabe stood by and kept recording Yuli's performance with a pen. All of this needed to be reported to Danzo and Orochimaru. He was also a little surprised at Yuli's performance. You know, according to his original plan, he only needed to complete one set of training. However, after seeing Yuli's current physical condition and specific performance, Watanabe temporarily added a set of physical training for Yuli. Sometimes a person's endurance can also determine his or her achievements. It has to be said that Yuli's physique really made Watanabe a little envious. Only half an hour later, he saw that Yuli was no longer lying on the ground, but stood up consciously and looked at himself, as if he had fully recovered. Only the slightly rising and falling of his chest revealed the fact that he had not yet fully recovered. The next step is to train your hand seal speed. On the battlefield, no one will stand by and wait for you to finish the hand seal before starting. Improving the hand seal technique and speeding up the hand seal speed can increase your chances of survival on the battlefield. Of course, Improving the seal technique is not something you can do now, but I have high hopes for you. Now you need to learn the seal gestures and become proficient, and proficient again. Turn it into your muscle memory and remember it. This is all for your own good. Today, we are learning the 12 basic hand seals. Z, overlapping thumbs, with a left thumb on top. Jo, right hand horizontal, left hand vertical. Yin, both thumbs extended straight. Mao, make a fist with the remaining 4 fingers of the right hand except the little finger. Chen, overlap the thumbs, with the left thumb on top. Si, overlap the thumbs, with the left thumb on top. Wu, extend the elbows, with the index fingers of the 2 hands facing each other to form a triangle way, thumb stretched upwards and overlapped, with the left thumb on top. Shen, little finger and thumb parallel. Yu, pay attention to the angle of the thumb and the front and back of the fingers of both hands. Su, place the right fist in the palm of the left hand. Hai, make fists with both hands, with the palms facing each other. Although these are the most basic hand seals, we need to not only learn them, but also learn them as quickly as possible. The faster the better. Got it? Understood, Uncle Quing. The sun climbed silently upwards, and in the blink of an eye, another 2 hours had passed. It was noon and time for lunch. Watanabe Quing looked at Yuli, whose hands were trembling slightly, and a barely perceptible smile flashed across his lips. This little guy is quite tenacious. Let's go eat first. We'll continue at 3 p.m. and start today's cultural class. Okay, Uncle Quing. Yu Li just nodded without saying anything. He picked up the wet clothes on the ground and walked towards his room. He wanted to take a shower and relax first. Although I'm very hungry, I'll just bear with it for now. It's really uncomfortable to be wet. It's so comfortable, soaking in the bathtub. This is a medicinal bath specially prepared by the Root Research Department according to Yuli's physique. It is full of precious medicinal materials, which can fully marinate Yuli. This medicinal bath can restore Yuli's strength when he's extremely tired, and it can also stimulate his body's activity and strengthen his body in a gentle way. However, this is a long process and is not so suitable for ordinary people, but for Yuli, it can be said to be a perfect match and can effectively develop the potential of the body. After lying there for a few minutes, he sat up slightly and moved the table next to the bathtub towards him. There was a tube of special nutritious meal on the table, but what made Yuli quite happy was that there were 2 big chicken legs and a box of Odin next to the meal. My conscience has been awakened. Tears welled up in my eyes. Although the nutritious meal is extremely nutritious and can perfectly satisfy Yuli's current body's need for energy, those guys at the Root don't consider the taste at all. Dogs won't eat these things, unless they have no way to resist. In the afternoon, Yuli arrived at the training ground on time and immediately saw the conspicuous table next to Watanabe Quing, on which was a pile of metal tools. There was a flash of excitement in his eyes. What boy doesn't like to wield swords? As a ninja, you must learn to use weapons proficiently. My requirement for you is to at least be able to use shuriken, kunai, and a medium-length weapon with ease. Okay, Uncle Quing. I don't know when the sun set over the mountain, and in the blink of an eye, 3 hours had passed. Okay, that's all for today. Starting tomorrow afternoon, you will practice using ninja tools for 2 hours every afternoon. Within a week, I need you to determine which medium-long weapons you are best at. Do you understand? Okay, got it. Let's go eat. You can go out for a bit tonight. Lord Danzo has given you permission to go out once you finish your lessons. Okay, got it, Uncle Quing. Chapter 9 Talking about Yule. This is Yule's situation, my lord. Okay, got it. Remember to encourage Yuli more next time. Okay, yes. In fact, the young master has worked very hard. After all, this is a 1-hour training session designed based on his physical fitness, but the young master actually persisted for 2 hours, considering the medicinal bath provided by the R&D department and the young master's recovery ability. I have added an hour without authorization. If I hadn't stopped him, perhaps the young master would have continued. Well, Yule is a well-behaved child who can endure hardships, is ruthless, and has a strong physique. He is a natural ninja. Orochimaru has already said that when Yule officially enters the ninja school, he will hold a ceremony to accept him as his disciple, and will lead the team to guide him after he graduates. Watanabe Ao stood tall and silent. He knew that Danzo didn't need him to respond. I have fought with Hiruzen for most of my life, but in the end I lost because of that moment of hesitation. Don't you think it's a bit ridiculous? I have no children in my life, and I was nicknamed the Darkness of Konoha. In the end, it seems that no one dares to get close to me. Look at Hiruzen, standing in the sun, so glorious and majestic, basking in the sunshine and enjoying the praise of the world. Why can't I do that? Perhaps I really have no hope, even though Hiruzen's weakness displeases me. Is there any hope for Yule? If it is in his hands, can Konoha unify the ninja world and keep Konoha peaceful forever? Danzo looked at Yule's information in his hand, which also contained a series of Yule's illustrations. No, that won't happen. If it were based on his temper, Yule would probably kill all those who dared to resist. It seems that what he pursues is a little different from us. Watanabe. Ao remained expressionless when he heard what Danzo said. He was absolutely loyal to Danzo. Even if Danzo told him to commit suicide by seppuku, he would do it without hesitation. That was why Danzo did not avoid him. Hiruzen is too weak. He needs to be tough when facing the outside world. Strike the first blow to prevent 100 blows from coming. Konoha's geographical location is too good. For other countries, it is a piece of nutritious fat meat. If they do not show enough strength to prove that they are capable of protecting it, they will only be coveted by these jackals and hyenas. This is no longer the era when Hashirama-sama and Tobirama-sensei were still around. Being coveted is unbearable for Danzo, a group of greedy hyenas. This is also the reason why he chose to establish the route. The Hokage needs to stand in the light. Their Konoha is not the same as those bandits and thugs in the Cloud Villages. For the Sand Village, what can be said about a village formed by a group of rebellious Ronin? If the Wind Country was not too barren, attacking it would be a completely thankless task, and it would be a question whether his Sand Village would still exist. The Kingdom of Water? A bunch of overseas barbarians. The Kingdom of Earth is just a barren land, with only those mineral veins of some value. Yes, Lee can't do it either. He is more suitable to take my place. Haha, he is cruel and well-behaved. He is more like a sharp blade than a sword holder. Moon. Music, tick, tick, tick. The bandaged hand tapped the ironwood disc in front of him for half a year. Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Hiruzen roamed around the route as if they were strolling in the back garden. Coupled with Yuli's gentle temperament, the atmosphere of the route changed a little bit. For a while Danzo seems to have changed, or maybe he hasn't changed, who knows, but it is unknown whether he still has the idea of training Yule into tool without any emotions in his heart. Time has the greatest influence in the world. It will silently change people's thoughts and ideas in his eyes. Yule was very similar to Orochimaru, with no background, great talent, and a cold personality. No, he was just indifferent to outsiders. Even compared to Orochimaru, he is more ruthless, not towards others, but towards himself. According to the report, Yuli's muscles were torn, but he ignored it completely. Perhaps it was due to his recovery ability, but the pain was not reduced at all compared with Yuli. The biggest setback Orochimaru suffered in his life was being named one of the three ninjas, a title that was more insulting than honorable, by that old bastard Hanzo of the Salamander. This is a shame for the three of them. Who are they? They are the disciples of the third Hokage of Konoha. They are the cold king of Konoha and the genius of ninjutsu. She is the granddaughter of the first generation. She is the founder of the medical ninjutsu system. Even the most insignificant Jiraiya is far beyond the reach of ordinary ninjas. The only thing that's wrong with that old man is his age. In a few more years, who knows who will win? A mere leader of the Rain Village, it has to be said that Danzo is a complete village discriminator. He looks down on all non-Konoha ninjas. His sense of identification with Konoha is far beyond the reach of ordinary people. No one knew what Danzo was thinking, and no one dared to ask. Well, that's it for today. Tell the R&D department to increase the concentration of Yule's medicinal bath and prepare a new medicinal bath. It will be used, by the way, tell them to improve the taste of his nutritious meals. Also, tell that kid to eat less junk. Back off, Watanabe. Ao nodded slightly, left the room silently, leaving Danzo sitting there alone, and closed the door gently. The pale yellow light shone on Danzo, revealing a bit of loneliness. The pointer on the wall kept spinning, and in a blink of an eye, Danzo had been working at his desk for several hours. Bang bang. Come in. What's up, sir? This is what the young master asked me to bring to you. Well, leave it here. What about the boy? The young master said he was too tired, so he went to rest first. Understood. Back off. Yes. The person came quietly, just as he came, and just like Watanabe, Danzo had many useful and loyal tools around him, but that was all. Put down the information in your hand. These are the information sent back by his spies scattered in major countries and ninja villages: assassination, house raiding, spying, spreading rumors, ninjutsu research and development experiments. After they are sorted, they will be sent to him, and he will inform Hiruzen according to the severity of the disease. As he said, he is the Dark Lord of Konoha, so it is more appropriate for him to do these things. He is the leader of the roots, and the roots are buried in the soil, chewing the corpses of maggots and rotten leaves, and struggling to explore the endless darkness for the growth of the tree. He looked at the lunchbox that had just been put down by his subordinates not far away, paused, stretched forward slightly, and took the lunchbox in front of him. A faint fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. In a trance, Danzo swallowed his saliva and realized that he seemed to have not eaten dinner. Light white steam rose upwards. In the lunchbox with light blue patterns, there were several sushi neatly arranged, and his mouth was filled with junk food. Feeling the warmth coming from his palm, Danzo couldn't help but be stunned and lost in thought for a moment. Haha, this kid. Chapter 10, See Blood, Refine Chakra. Hurry up, as long as you still have strength, you must speed up. On the battlefield, every second you hold on, you will have a greater chance of survival. Obstacle. Training is being conducted on a specially customized training ground at the root. This place is decorated with many small scenes, such as dilapidated houses, realistic quagmires, dense jungles and wilderness. Although it looks small, it is actually as spacious as 4 football fields. Traps suddenly popped up one after another from those inconspicuous corners, including wooden stakes, flying knives, kunai and even ground spikes. Watanabe Queen stood on the high platform at the edge of the training ground, his eyes fixed on Yuil, who was constantly moving, dodging and running towards the target, while constantly taking notes in his hands. This is a training ground specially built by the root, dedicated to training root members who have just started to refine chakra. And this week, the entire training ground has been occupied by Yuli alone. Time flies, and in a blink of an eye Yuli has been participating in training for 3 whole months. Watanabe Oia had already told her that a new class would be added tonight, the method of refining chakra. This news made Yuli very excited. He could finally get in touch with the power that those ninjas possessed. Power. Only with power can he live better, and take revenge. But, revenge, who should I seek? They were just a bunch of wandering ninjas. From Yuli's current position, they were just a bunch of scum who could be wiped out in an instant if they asked Grandpa Danzo for help. It was not even known whether they survived the war. This made Yuli sad for a while. After 3 full months of intensive physical training, he finally gained Danzo's recognition and was qualified to learn chakra refinement. Yuli bent down slightly and gasped for breath at this moment. The sun was high in the sky, and the hot air was continuously inhaled into his body. He felt his lungs burning as if they were roasted by fire, and his heartbeat was so violent that it seemed to jump out of his chest, frantically transporting oxygen to all parts of his body. After 9 months of careful nursing, Yuli is no longer the skinny and frail man who would collapse at the slightest gust of wind. Now, his body is full of strong tendons, but not too thick. His body lines are graceful and smooth, and he is wearing a slim and highly stretchable training suit. His hair, which was originally messy and looked like weeds, has now become smooth, with the roots turning orange-brown, tied into a bunch and hanging behind his head. His eyes are sharp and firm, full of expectations and confidence for the future. Yuli had already seen blood in the first month of special training. Danzo cut the tendons of a spy from another country and placed him in front of him. The spy was covered in wounds and looked horrible. There was hardly a piece of intact skin on his body, and it seemed as if he would breathe his last at any time. Perhaps there is no need for Yuli to make the final move. Just leave him here and wait for a while. Within half a day, he will die on his own and his soul will return to the Pure Land. All the information in his mind had already been stolen by the root organization, and the only value of his existence was to satisfy Yuli's desire to see blood with his own hands. This was also Yuli's breakthrough. Being a ninja is not as simple as playing house. The kunai held tightly in his hand flashed coldly under the bright light. Yuli's eyes were as steady as an abyss, without any trace of the innocence and childishness that should belong to his age, as calm and composed as poultry facing slaughter. Yuli, after experiencing all kinds of hardships in this world, has become a completely different person from what he was a few months ago. Perhaps, this is something that must be experienced in order to grow up. Yuli raised the corner of his mouth slightly, as if he remembered something interesting, but this expression was seen by Danzo and other bystanders as a sign of the boy's contempt for killing. Just as Orochimaru said before, this boy is a natural-born ninja. His steps were steady, and he made no sound while walking, standing quietly in front of the spy. Bending over, muttering, "Rest in peace," I will live on for you, don't worry, Puffin. An instant, scarlet blood flowed out like a fountain along the gaps between the sharp cunei, quickly dyeing the ground beneath their feet red. The spy who was hid in the vitals let out a hoarse and low gasp. Ha ha, as his throat was filled with blood. His breathing became extremely difficult and his body was shaking violently and uncontrollably. Those originally cloudy and lifeless eyes were now staring at Yuli, with their eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets. However, after just a moment, he was completely dead. Yuli picked up the blood-stained rag beside him expressionlessly and carefully wiped off the bloodstains on the cunei. Immediately, he reached out and gently closed the spy's eyes, but just as he closed them, the spy's eyes opened again on their own. Close again, open again. Close again, open again. Brother, are you really dead or faking your death? After repeating this several times, Yuli simply tore off a piece of cloth that was not yet stained with blood from the spy's body and covered a pair of eyes that seemed like they would never close. After doing all this, Yuli whispered to himself, this should be enough for you to rest in peace. Standing up, Yuli quietly looked at Danzo and Orochimaru in front of him, his tone flat, as if he didn't care at all that he had just killed a life with his own hands. He has no signs of life, teacher, grandpa, haha, very good, Danzo nodded and smiled with satisfaction. I told you before that chakra is a substance produced by the fusion of physical energy and spiritual energy, and physical energy is the most critical link. After months of arduous physical training, your body now has a solid foundation for refining chakra. And this meditation method in front of you is the result of our careful research. After many experiments, it was finally formed with the most significant results. Then I said, you should write it down. Concentrate your mental power, close your eyes, eliminate all external disturbances, and devote yourself to meditation. You should know that chakra is the mysterious power that the human body is born with, and it is hidden in every corner of the body. Concentrate your mind, hold your breath, focus your mind, breathe slowly, and slowly mobilize the chakra hidden in the cells, allowing it to flow along the acupoints and meridians in the body. Stay calm and keep your breathing steady and long. Then, gradually awaken the chakras hidden deep in the cells and guide them to flow slowly along the acupuncture points and meridians in the body. In the sealed room, a stick of sandalwood was burning leisurely. As a young master of the root, Yuli used sandalwood that was made from the best treasures of the Nara family. These sandalwoods not only incorporate a small amount of precious medicinal materials such as rosin, white ginseng, bauhinia bark, frankincense, cinnamon, drenaria and angelica, but also have many wonderful uses such as calming the mind, replenishing ki and blood, and strengthening muscles and bones. At this moment, Yuli was sitting upright on the soft cushion, motionless like a sculpture. He closed his eyes, adjusted his breathing, and slowly calmed his mind. In an instant, everything around him seemed to gradually disappear from his perception, leaving only the surging energy in his body flowing freely like a trickle of water, carefully trying to mobilize these energies, awakening their potential power bit by bit. As time passed, the sun slowly set, gradually sliding from the towering mountain top to the foot of the mountain. The brilliant and gorgeous sunset glowed on this land filled with a will of fire, giving people a dreamlike feeling. But Yuli was unaware of the passage of time. He was immersed in the world of cultivation and had spent a whole afternoon in the secret room. I succeeded. As he poured all his energy into his spirit, Yuli suddenly felt the chakra taking shape in his body, slowly gathering together, and finally forming a stream that flowed slowly in his body. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly, and his eyes flashed with uncontrollable excitement. I did it. Yuli, extremely excited, stood up suddenly, walked quickly to the door of the secret room, and pushed it open with force. At first glance, I saw Watanabe quietly waiting outside the secret room. Uncle Quing. I succeeded. Yuli couldn't hide her joy and couldn't wait to share the good news with Watanabe Quing. Watanabe Quing looked at the ecstatic young man in front of him, his eyes full of admiration and satisfaction, and said with a smile, as expected of a young master, you are gifted. The adults will definitely be very happy when they know about this. The master is still working. Do you want to go and tell him? Well, I'll go over first, Uncle Quing. By the way, prepare more dinner. I'm so hungry now. Okay, master. After greeting Watanabe, Yuli walked quickly towards Danzo's office. Yuli's steps were brisk at this time. He had finally come into contact with the extraordinary power and was one step closer to survival. Dong. Enter, Grandpa. I extracted chakra. Is that so? Good. Keep up the good work. The chakra that had just been extracted and was still slightly thin was continuously gathered in the palm of his hand. It was seen that the color of the chakra in Yuli's palm was unexpectedly different from that of ordinary people. It showed a touch of elegant and refreshing green tone, as fresh and tender as the first buds of spring, exuding an intoxicating and vibrant breath. Grandpa, can I start learning ninjutsu now? Yule looked at Danzo expectantly. Yes, starting from tomorrow, Quinn will teach you the most basic and practical 3-body techniques. This is a necessary skill for a ninja. After you have mastered it thoroughly, we will consider learning other more advanced ninjutsu. Danzo also had a smile in his eyes and responded to Yuli with a smile. No problem. I'll definitely work harder, Yuli responded confidently, saying that she would not let her grandfather and Uncle Quinn down. By the way, Grandpa, you haven't had dinner yet. How about we go have dinner together? I have asked Uncle Quinn to prepare a sumptuous meal in advance. Lee couldn't suppress his excitement, as he finally came into contact with the true power of a ninja. Well, let's go together. Danzo looked back at the case files on the desk, then gently rubbed Yuli's head. Yuli walked forward happily and held Danzo's calloused hands tightly. Although Danzo's palms were rough and calloused from years of wear and tear and early training, the touch made Yuli feel particularly kind and warm. He lowered his head slightly, his eyes fixed on the cheerful steps moving forward under his feet and on himself being led by the hand, his heart filled with joy and happiness at this moment. Danzo also looked at the lively and lovely Xiaoyu beside him with eyes full of love and satisfaction. This little fellow's talent is truly amazing. He successfully completed the chakra refining process in just one afternoon. Moreover, his chakra contains such a rich and intense vitality that even Tsunade would be slightly inferior to him. Maybe we can add a course of medical ninjutsu for Yuli, and ask Tsunade to teach him. That crazy girl loves to come to the root all day long, so let her be a teacher for my grandson. Thinking of this, Danzo's mouth corners curled up slightly, and a smile flashed in his eyes, which was just seen by Yuli, who turned around. Grandpa, are you thinking about something happy? Danzo's face returned to calm as if by magic, as if nothing had happened. Children should stay out of adult matters. Oh, Yule. Shut up. Don't ask, just a little bit. Chapter 11 Testing Training Results. With a hint of solemnity on his face, Yuli knew that today, teacher Orochimaru would come to the root in person to check his learning progress in the training ground. The bright white lights above our heads shine brightly like bright stars. Uncle Quinn, I'll start then. Before Watanabe Quinn finished his words, Yuli was like an arrow shot from a bow, with the wind under his feet, and he had crossed the distance of 10 meters in the blink of an eye. The speed is good, Sarutobi. Hiruzen came to the root with Orochimaru and Tsunade. At this time, they were standing at the edge of the training ground with Danzo, examining Yuli's training results after 2 weeks of training. Although Yuli's 3-body technique has not reached perfection, it is not inferior to that of a senior Jonin. With a smile on his face, he looked at Yuli, who was rushing towards him. Watanabe Quinn stood where he was, as steady as a rock, without even moving an inch. He just raised his hand slightly and firmly grasped Yuli's wrist, holding the kunai like an iron clamp. I'm a little less powerful. Seeing this, Yuli used his front foot as a support point and slashed across with his back foot like a whirlwind. At the same time, his shoes flashed with a sharp light, as sharp as a blade. Continue. With a bang, the controlled Yuli instantly turned into a cloud of smoke, and a wooden stake replaced her. Shhhhh. Several sharp kunai flew towards him like lightning. Watanabe Quinn was as light as a swallow. He shook his body slightly and easily avoided Yuli's hidden weapon. The accuracy is still a little lacking, and more training is needed. Lee didn't care about Watanabe Quinn's words. He ran around Watanabe Quinn like lightning. In an instant, several identical Yuli appeared in front of everyone. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. This time, more than 10 kunai broke through the air from all directions, blocking Watanabe's space to dodge like a dense net. This child's training results are quite good. He has already reached the level of a Jonin. Haha, he is a talent carefully cultivated by my Danzo, elder. Danzo's training is indeed very effective. At the sidelines of the training ground, several people were commenting on each other. If it weren't for this chance encounter, they wouldn't have been able to see this test match of Yuli's training results. I have to say, perhaps because of Yuli's existence, the relationship between Danzo, Tsunade and Orochimaru is no longer as tense as before. Of course, for Tsunade, Being able to restrain herself from getting angry was already quite polite in the field. Watanabe Queen saw that he was surrounded, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a somewhat relieved smile. After all, he was Yuli's real mentor, so he was naturally very happy about Yuli's progress. Watanabe Queen was holding a kunai tightly in his hand. After a few ding-ding sounds, the kunai around him fell one after another. Call, above. Watanabe Queen, Yuli suddenly appeared like a ghost, with a gleam of brilliance in his eyes, and a weapon like a tang sword in his hand on the inky black blade. Several bleeding grooves were faintly visible, emitting a cold light. This is the weapon Yuli finally chose, no other than Shuair, Uncle Queen, be careful. Yuli shouted. Click, wood chips flew like arrows, and the tang sword in Yuli's hand was like a gust of wind, carrying a fierce momentum, and chopped straight towards Watanabe Queen, who had a smile on his face as the sound of the wooden stake falling was heard. The person standing there was no longer Watanabeo, but the wooden stake that was split in half, flew several meters away and fell far away on the ground. Huh? Not good. Before Yuli could turn around, a kunai was pressed against his neck as fast as lightning. Haha, Yul, it looks like you lost, Uncle Queen, you are cheating. There was a hint of annoyance in Yuli's voice. Well, if you want to gamble, you have to admit defeat. I only used 1-3 body technique. There was a hint of teasing in Watanabeo's tone. Practice more on your own later. Just practice throwing. Move the target 1,000 times and then you can rest. Got it. Yuli was a little dejected, but a gleam of determination flashed in his eyes. He understood that he was still far from his goal and had to work harder. Clap clap. There was a round of warm applause. Yuli turned around and saw that Sarutobi and the others were smiling and applauding him. Grandpa. Sarutobi, teacher, sister, why are you here, eh? Smile reappeared on Yul's face. Well, Yuli is getting better and better. Yul was encouraged by Sarutobi Hirozen's praise. A smile appeared on his face and his eyes narrowed. It's all thanks to Grandpa Danzo and Uncle Queen who taught me well. Yuli's humility won everyone's favor. Haha, Konoha will have a brighter future if it has seeds like you. Seeing Yuli being so humble, Sarutobi Hirozen stroked his beard with satisfaction, with anticipation in his eyes. Yul, look what I brought you, sister. Tsunade's voice was like heavenly music. Yuli's eyes narrowed slightly and a happy smile appeared on her face. Although the food at the root has been improved and the taste has been greatly improved, it is still inferior to the snacks. And this is brought by Sister Tsunade, which naturally makes Yul more excited. However, Yuli did not reach out to take it immediately, but came to Teacher Orochimaru obediently. Teacher, well, you've done well. You'll be entering the ninja school soon, so I don't need you to graduate early. Give you 3 years to lay a solid foundation, and I'll take over after you graduate. Come on, Yul. Teacher Orochimaru's words filled Yul's heart with motivation. Good. Teacher, Yuli nodded. He had a heartfelt respect for Orochimaru. If he had not chosen to bring him back to Konoha, given his initial physical condition, he would have been fed to wild beasts or died early in the land of rain due to hunger and cold. Ninja world, 5 major countries, world war, ninja. He had already thoroughly understood these common sense over the past 6 months, and naturally knew the kindness that Orochimaru and Tsunade had shown him. And, thinking of this, Yuli's thoughts began to change. That was the night when chakra was successfully extracted. I had another dream, Yul. It seems that you have come into contact with Sizzling, the power seed of the world. Next, Sizzling, the world, Sizzling, catalyzing your physique, Sizzling, lifespan, Sizzling, survive, love. In the dream, Yuli seemed to see her own mother, but for some reason, Yuli always felt that her mother's voice was muffled and could not be heard clearly. It seemed that her physical condition was improved because of the power seed? Was it chakra lifespan? What does it have to do with lifespan? Yuli covered her head. She didn't sleep well. She felt as if she had forgotten something. But when she turned her head, she forgot what she was thinking. However, he remembered the 3 words survive very clearly. His mother wanted him to try his best to survive. Mom, I will. Since that day, his chakra has grown faster and faster, and his body's recovery ability has become stronger, and all this was achieved within a month. When Danzo and the others got this information, they were all surprised, but it was only the increase brought by Yu's unique chakra today. Yul's chakra capacity is comparable to that of an elite chunin. However, he has not learned any other ninjutsu besides the 3-body technique he failed to convert his potential into actual combat power. so his strength is still limited to the level of Jinan, followed by Chunin. This fact further strengthened Danzo's determination to speed up Yule's training, and also increased Sarutobi's visits to Yule exponentially. Go out for a walk, Yule. Staying at the root all day is not good for your growth, okay, Grandpa Hirozen? Yule nodded slightly. After spending more than half a year together, he already knew that the people around him, especially Sarutobi and Danzo, had an extreme love for the village. Their kindness and goodness belong only to their own people, or even to their own faction. In order to survive in such an environment, he must demonstrate the full will of fire and show extreme love and protection for the village. However, Yuli did not object to this. Some things just need to be buried deep in one's heart. Konoha saved him, gave him a new life, gave him strength, and gave him enough space to grow. As long as it did not violate the bottom line of survival, he was willing to dedicate himself to the village. After all, Yuli is not a naturally cold-blooded person, but it is also for this reason that Yuli's emotional investment is often limited to a certain group of people. He can't be gentle to too many people. Perhaps this is also his unique tenderness towards the people he cares about. Chapter 12, Chakra Finest Training. Chakra is extremely important to every ninja. Every ninja needs to master the use of every bit of chakra in the right place. After a pause, Watanabe added, except for the existence of the Shadame Nidame-sama, your chakra is rich in vitality, which makes you look a bit like the Uzumaki clan. Maybe one of your ancestors was a member of the Uzumaki clan, but this is not what you need to know now. Danzo-sama hopes that you will devote some of your energy to learning medical ninjutsu from Tsunade-sama, but before that, all the prerequisites are to have super control over chakra. This is the foundation of the foundation, so today we started learning the first steps: climbing trees, treading water, distribute the chakra evenly on the soles of your feet, and walk up step by step. When you can walk to the treetops without falling, and can stand on the water to fight without falling, then your first step will be qualified. Standing under the tree, Watanabe told Yuli the key points of climbing the tree little by little, then condensed the chakra to cover the soles of his feet, and easily walked up the big tree in front of him. Yuli felt a little itchy, and seeing Watanabe walking on flat ground, he immediately started his own studies, even continuous, keeping the key points in mind. Yuli covered his feet with chakra and began to move his steps, imitating Watanabe as my feet touched the tree trunk. A staccato feeling began to appear. Yuli was somewhat curious about the stickiness between the tree trunk, but before he could be happy, Watanabe saw him fall to the ground with a bang. Keep a peaceful mind. Seeing Yuli fall, Watanabe didn't care about the accident at all. Almost everyone who has just come into contact with these things will fall down during training. This is an inevitable process for him. There are no shortcuts. An afternoon passed quickly, and Yuli was seen falling from the tree again and again. However, it was visible to the naked eye that the height Yuli climbed to was getting higher and higher each time the sun sets, and the red sunset glows on Yuli. There seems to be light in his eyes, and his body is covered with mud and grass. Thanks to his powerful recovery ability and physical strength, Yuli suffered almost no damage. At this moment, he was standing at 1/3 of the height of the tree, looking into the distance. Yule has already succeeded in climbing the tree the next day, just as Watanabe and Yuli had expected. In just a short while, Yuli had climbed to the limit of the branch that the tree could support his weight. Come on down, and tread water. Good. Lee, the voice was somewhat brisk, and Yuli jumped a few times and came down from the tree to Watanabe without any of his clothes getting messy. Snapped, Gilulu, bah, bah, bah. He was soaked all over. The feeling of treading water was completely different from climbing a tree. Yuli had lost his footing dozens of times and could only walk 1 or 2 steps on the water before falling into the river. This river is constantly flowing, and Yuli needs to pay attention to the output of chakra at all times so that it can reach a balanced state with a flowing water surface. But how easy is it to achieve this state? Standing by the river, Watanabe played with a string of beads in his hand, yawned, and watched Yuli get up and continue practicing without getting discouraged. Treading water is different from climbing trees, and he has already prepared for Yuli to learn for a week or 2. As long as Yuli can learn to climb trees and tread water before entering school, his mission will be accomplished. The highest good is like water. Water benefits all things without contending, and stays with everyone. Don't fight. Don't fight, huh? Suddenly, a passage emerged in Yuli's mind, so vague and hazy that he could hardly see it clearly. Keeping a calm mind, standing by the water, Yuli was soaked all over. He fell into the water again and again, and choked on water again and again, but the light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. The chakra in his body slowly gathered at his feet with his mind, and a faint green light kept flowing. One foot stepped down and stepped on the water surface, just like flat ground, and then the back foot also stepped on the water surface. The river flowed towards the distance, the rippling water waves sparkled in the sun, the green on both sides were reflected, the blue sky and white clouds floated above it, the sun penetrated the clouds, and the air was filled with the scent of grass. Circles of ripples flowed under his feet. He lifted his foot again and stepped down. His foot, which was wrapped in a faint green light, stepped steadily on the flowing water. In a trance, his body sank slightly, and it seemed that he was going to fail again. Yuli closed her eyes and calmly felt the chakra flowing in her body. She quickly adjusted her breathing and balance and floated steadily on the water. His footsteps were like a dragonfly skimming the water, creating ripples with every step by step, from slow to fast. I opened my eyes and looked at myself, who had already moved forward more than 10 steps, and the corners of my mouth instantly raised up. Puff Gululu, Watanabe, who noticed this scene, couldn't help but laugh. But this kid is really amazing. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. The progress is even faster than climbing a tree. Yuli's learning efficiency is worthy of being the one that Danzo-sama has chosen. Keep calm. Don't get carried away, okay? Uncle Quing, when he swam to the shore, his wet hair hung down, but Yuli was smiling. He knew that he was not far from success. Sure enough, just one afternoon later, pieces of gravel flew through the air, and Yuli was seen running at high speed on the river, turning left and right, sometimes practicing hand seals, sometimes slashing with a sword, and sometimes throwing gravel. 2 days. Yuli completed the tree climbing and water treading skills training in just 2 days. This data was placed by Danzo into Yule's data cabinet, which was a filing cabinet specially built for Yule, and contained all of Yule's growth records. After he came to Konoha, he was placed alone by Danzo next to the desk. Give him 2 weeks off, let him rest, walk around, and get used to the new environment. School is about to start, and according to what Hirozen said, we need to deepen Yuli's bond with the village. Just like that, Yuli seemed like an idle person with nothing to do for a while. Suddenly he couldn't adapt very well. It was the first time he had so much free time since he came to this world. He was so free that he felt a little overwhelmed. Watanabe Queen didn't come to call him today, but Yuli still woke up at 5 o'clock. I staggered to the training ground, which was empty. Thinking of what Danzo said about giving me a 2-week vacation, I suddenly felt confused. Wandering aimlessly in the route, the passing route members would stop and greet Yuli with a respectful attitude. Everyone could see how much Danzo cared about Yuli. There are too many secrets in the route: the archives, the research department, the training ground, the interrogation room. In the route, Yule can be said to be rampant, except for the interrogation room. According to Danzo, when he is a little older, he will personally take him to the interrogation room. Yuli also knew that his grandfather Danzo was not a great and glorious person. On the contrary, the organs, strange objects, cold equipment in the research institute, and the shrill screams and wails that came from the interrogation room from time to time. But Yuli didn't feel anything about it. Kindness is reserved for one's own people. Only by being cruel to others can you protect the ones you want to protect. Master, why don't you go out for a walk? You have been here for so long, but you probably haven't really walked around the village yet. Suddenly, a gentle voice came from behind Yuli. Yuli turned around and saw that the person was Watanabe Quing. Uncle Quing, haha, go out and take a look. The adults also said that these 2 weeks are your vacation, so just relax and have a good time. Go out, okay, then I'll go out for a walk. Uncle Quing, do you want to come with me? I won't go. I have other things to do. Have fun. Here is 1,000 taels. Use it as you like. If you see anything you want to buy, just buy it yourself. Lee paused after receiving the banknote handed over by Dubai King. Thank you, Uncle Quing. Hey, it's nothing. Go and have fun by yourself. Well, goodbye, Uncle Quing. He waved to Watanabe Quing, looked at Watanabe Quing's receding figure, and then looked down at the money in his hand. Yuli was a little dazed for a moment. He hadn't used money for a long time. In that case, let's go out for a walk. Chapter 13, Ninja School Day 1. Just as she walked out of the roots, the warm sunshine made Yuli stop. She stood there and felt the warmth for a moment, enjoying it. The main body of the roots is underground, and only a small part of the visible buildings are above the ground, so there are very few opportunities to enjoy free air. I just picked a direction and started today's random walk. The surrounding area is full of houses built with wooden structures, which are easy to build and renovate. Coupled with the unique nature and extraordinary powers of ninjas, Yuli thought it was quite fitting. After all, the destructive power of ninjas. Yuli once witnessed with his own eyes the scene where Dubai King demonstrated powerful ninjutsu to him. It is easy to maintain and there are many Konoha trees. The war had just ended not long ago, so there weren't many people walking on the streets, but there were quite a few shops open. It's all for livelihood. People always have to eat, and as Konoha is the village with the most advantageous geographical location in the ninja world, its business is naturally impeccable. At a quick glance, the surrounding shops sell everything, and there is no such thing as a single product. It's just that Yuli is a little bit puzzled by the technology of this era, and always feels that it is a bit biased. The atmosphere of war did not seem to involve the civilian class of Konoha too much, at least on the surface. Yuli walked casually on the street, buying a couple of skewers of barbecue snacks from time to time to satisfy her taste buds. Eating is one of Yuli's few hobbies. There really aren't many entertainment facilities in Konoha, but even if Danzo was there, he probably wouldn't let Yuli go. People passing by did not show as much respect to Yuli as they did to the people from the route. Instead, because of Yuli's age, they looked at him with an inexplicable loving look. There were also some grandmas and uncles who would give him little gifts or something, which made Yuli feel a little embarrassed for a moment, so he stopped looking around a little. The current Yuli is very different from the past. He is 1.3 meters tall, with long flaxen brown hair tied behind his back with a red rope. He wears an avocado green waistcoat, which was a gift from Tsunade. The outfit reveals his figure a little bit, and at first glance, he looks less childish and more handsome, but in the eyes of passers-by on the street, a cute and polite child. This place is much better than the rain country. Looking at the prosperous scenes around and the smiles on the faces of the residents, Yuli couldn't help but sigh that compared with the original uninhabited small village, Konoha village could be said to be a paradise. As he was walking, Yuli suddenly felt a gust of wind coming from the front and subconsciously turned sideways to hide. Call out. A figure passed by, and before Yuli could speak, several more figures ran forward in disorderly steps. Minato is ahead. Chase him. These are some kids playing and fighting. Shaking his head, Yuli was not interested in this and continued to stroll forward. Before he had gone far, the man who almost bumped into Yuli suddenly turned back, came in front of Yuli and gave him an embarrassed smile. Sorry, buddy, I almost bumped into you. Yeah, it's okay. Yuli looked at the other person's golden hedgehog-like hair and bright blue eyes, and shook her head slightly. Turn around and leave. My name is Namikaze Minato. What's your name? Yuli didn't look back. This was just a small episode today and he didn't care about it. Moon. Music. Yule. Huh? That's really interesting. His reaction ability and speed are well known among the people around him. Minato was surprised and delighted that Yuli was able to avoid the attack in advance. Moon. Music. Shaking his head and looking at Yuli's receding figure, Minato Namikaze showed a look of interest in his eyes. Minato's here. Lele. Hearing the shouts of his friends behind him, Minato Namikaze chuckled and ran forward again. Ordinary children do not receive so-called preschool training or advanced teaching, and this is also Yuli's luck. Master, you are going to school today. How do you feel? It's okay, I don't feel anything. Let's go once you've packed up. It's the end of June again, and today the ninja school will be flooded with new forces. Today, only Watanabe accompanied Yuli to the ninja school. For Danzo and others, entering the school was just a small matter. It can be seen that on the road leading to the ninja school, there are gradually more parents with their children, including ninjas wearing forward protectors and uniforms, as well as ordinary people. Although a few people knew Watanabe's identity, the fact that he was wearing a ninja uniform made the passing ninjas look at him with a little respect. The Jonins are considered the elite group of a village. Natty, you must work hard in the future and strive to become a Jonin like that adult, okay? Mother, Kawano, stand up for me in school. Hi. Onu. You. Lee and Watanabe Queen didn't pay attention to the voices around them. They knew that most of the people would linger as Jonin and eventually rely on their seniority to become Chunin, and that would be the end of their lives. This is the ordinary life of an ordinary person, and this is a group of ninjas who have been promoted from more ordinary people. His existence, and the existence of Danzo and others behind him, destined him to not have too many interactions with the ordinary people around him. After arriving at the ninja school, due to Yuli's identity as a member of the root and the presence of Watanabe next to him, The people who received him were not only enthusiastic but also incredibly efficient. They quickly registered Yuli, and he officially became a new child in Konoha village who had just entered the ninja school after finishing what needed to be done. Watanabe Queen patted Yuli's shoulder gently, his eyes full of encouragement, and left. These few years in the ninja school will be the most peaceful for Yuli, and also the most suitable years for laying a solid foundation. After seeing Watanabe Queen's figure disappear, Yuli turned around and followed the teaching assistant who came to receive them, walking towards the classroom. Therefore, the privileged class exists everywhere. If Yuli did not come from the roots, there would be no one to take the initiative to help Yuli familiarize herself with the environment. Halfway through, the teaching assistant quietly looked at Yuli. Her flaxen brown hair was tied back with a light green headband. She was wearing a training suit that slightly revealed her figure. She had a faint smile on her face, but there was an obvious sense of distance. She did not have the excitement that other children should have. "This is the class you'll be in from now on." "Well, thank you," nodding slightly to the teaching assistant, Yuli opened the door of the classroom and walked in with a creak. Many students had already arrived in the classroom at this time. When they heard the noise at the door, the originally noisy classroom suddenly became quiet, and everyone's eyes unconsciously looked at Yuli, who had just entered. However, their gazes only stayed on him for a brief moment before they looked away and returned to their own business. Only when a blonde hedgehog head saw Yuli, a bright smile appeared on his face. He was the Minato Namikaze who almost bumped into Yule some time ago. After seeing Yule, his eyes lit up and he waved at Yule. At this time, the child sitting next to Minato saw Minato like this and murmured in his heart, after all, Yuli was a completely stranger to them. The children here are all native residents of Konoha. They may not know each other, but they all have impressions of each other. Not all of them are qualified to enroll in the ninja school. After all, there are only a few ordinary people who can come here. Most of them have ninjas in their families or their elders are ninjas. Therefore, before entering the ninja school, some of these peers had met each other many times, even if they were not familiar with each other. Only Yuli suddenly appeared. Before that, none of the children in the classroom had seen Yuli. Yuli stood at the door, and in response to Minato's kindness, she smiled and nodded, as a response to Minato. But Yuli did not choose to go to where the water gate was. Minato saw Yuli's hesitation, and a hint of helplessness flashed in his eyes. But it was true that humans were social animals. Even children would consciously form groups, ranging from 7 or 8 to 2 or 3. Minato has excellent looks and a gentle and likable personality, so he has many friends around him. Yuli's eyes swept across the slightly crowded seat next to Minato, then he silently looked away and walked towards a quieter corner. He had no intention of actively integrating into this so-called collective back window seat. After Yuli sat down, the friends next to Minato asked Minato if he knew Yuli, but Minato answered them vaguely. The seat he chose was in the last row on the left side of the classroom, next to the window, and there was no one there. After he sat down, he looked towards the playground outside the window. It was summer now, the sun was dazzling and hot, and the bright light seemed to reflect light into the eyes. About 10 minutes later, accompanied by the ringing of the class bell, the classroom door was slammed open. A man with empty sleeves, a pale face, a forward protector tied on his shoulder, but bright eyes walked in and closed the door casually. The students in the classroom seemed to be muted and fell silent, instantly walking towards the podium with a satisfied look. The one-armed man first glanced around, and his sharp eyes made everyone dodge. His steps were a little unsteady, and Yuli saw in this man's eyes the same temperament as many ninjas in the route, which were the traces of fighting on the battlefield. Today's teaching staff is absolutely top-notch. Basically, all the teachers in the school are elites who have retired from the battlefield, although most of them are disabled or have venous damage. However, this also shows that Konoha is at least humane in this regard. Cough. Cough. Hello, everyone, I'm Orochimaru, and I'll be your homeroom teacher for the next 3 years. In the next 3 years, I hope you can all graduate successfully. Of course, if you can't condense chakra within a year, then I'm sorry, turn right when you go out, you are not suitable for the profession of ninja. Finally, little ones, let me give you a piece of advice. Ninja is not a game for you to play. If you are afraid, just go home as soon as possible. Orochimaru's cold eyes and dull voice struck everyone's heart. His cold eyes swept across everyone, making most of the students dare not look at him and silently lowered their heads. This table is really a table. At the same time, in the Hokage's office at this time, Sarutobi was discussing the information sent back by the spy with Danzo and others. Danzo, does Yule start school today? Well, let the boy temper his temper in the ninja school and learn some theoretical knowledge at the same time. I heard that you want Tsunade to teach him medical ninjutsu. You know, Yule's chakra carries a strong breath of life, which can be said to be a great addition to medical ninjutsu. Yes, standing up, Sarutobi looked into the distance. This village passed down by the first generation, and his teacher was a place he was willing to protect with his life. Looking towards the direction of the ninja school. The future belongs to these children, Danzo. Humph. I can still fight for decades. Since you are old, Hiruzen, you should pass the position of Hokage to me as soon as possible. The sun is shining so brightly. I wish every day would be this peaceful. Sarutobi talked to himself, picked up the pipe and took a puff with great satisfaction. Danzo frowned and gave Sarutobi a fierce look. I am the Hokage. Danzo, Hiruzen. You will regret this. It's a beautiful day without war. The classroom was silent. Facing Utachiro's sudden sharp gaze, many people lowered their heads. Only a few did not look away, including Yuli and Minato. In just a few breaths, Utachiro remembered these children who were not overwhelmed by his aura. He then restrained his own aura, clapped his hands, and his tone softened a little, but still sounded dull. Okay, from left to right, let me introduce myself briefly. It didn't take too long, and after the self-introduction time was over, Sayamaki immediately began teaching. Chakra is a kind of energy produced by the perfect fusion of spiritual energy and physical energy. It is also the energy required to use ninjutsu. The first condition for becoming a ninja is to successfully extract chakra from the body and make it an energy that you can control. On the first day, Yuli didn't seem to learn anything, except for the blonde hedgehog who kept looking at him. How boring. So what is the purpose of attending this ninja school? It was not until Yuli returned to the roots that he realized that he had been overthinking it. Actually, it's quite comfortable to stay in the ninja school. Chapter 14 Eating Barbecue, Heart Disease. Thump. A pile of books slammed down in front of Yuli. Boy, old man Danzo asked me to teach you medical ninjutsu. As your sister, I will not refuse. But since you want to learn medical ninjutsu, you can't give up halfway. These books are all about learning the basics of medical ninjutsu. I'll give you a month to memorize them. Do you hear me? Tsunade sat leisurely on the chair, crossing her legs, her flip-flops swinging back and forth, her eyes showing some impatience and a hint of teasing. This kid's painful expression when he was learning the written language was really funny. But if you want to teach one sheep, you have to teach it, and if you want to drive two sheep, you have to drive them, so you might as well just take one more. Yes, there is a little girl around Tsunade recently, a shy girl named Shizune. This child is about the same age as Yuli, and is Kato Dan's niece. She is also Tsunade's thoughts on Kato Dan. However, considering Tsunade's lazy nature, it is still unclear whether it is Tsunade who takes care of Shizune or Shizune who takes care of Tsunade. Okay, sister, you. Lee's smile remained on her face, and she just said oh calmly. He picked up books that were taller than him. It must be said that after so much training, Yuli's physical fitness was still very good. At least he picked up these books without any effort. He turned around and walked towards his room, but his face looked a little sad. God knows how painful it was for me when I first started learning this world language. I couldn't understand a word and had to face those books every day. Oh my god. Okay, move the books back to your bedroom. I'll take you to eat barbecue later. Tsunade had a teasing look on her face as she looked at Yule, who seemed to have a dark cloud over his head and was bent over by the pressure. This child always brought her some joy. Hey. Yes. Sister is the best. The cloudy sky turned into sunny, and the dejected Yule instantly regained his original vitality. For a moment, he walked with the wind. When the root members passing by saw this, they knew that Lady Tsunade came to find Yule again. Only when Tsunade comes to the root will Yule show this expression. After all, she is the only one who brings food to Yule. The weather today is not good. It is covered with dark clouds, as if a heavy rain will come in the next moment. A feeling of heat makes the villagers of Konoha feel uncomfortable, but Yuli didn't feel anything at all. Shizune, let's eat up sister soon. Wakakakaka, Yukaku. Lady Tsunade is very poor. We can't do this. Jingaion's face turned red as she righteously criticized Yuli's bad words. Tsunade watched the two little guys bickering, and the smile in her eyes never stopped. Good boy, if you can eat me up, you'll be awesome. Just look at me. Yule is ambitious and motivated to eat a lot. My lords, the barbecue is placed here for you. Please enjoy it slowly. At this time, the waiter brought the barbecue ordered by Yuli and others. A Few more bottles of soju, okay. Sir, soon, the table was filled with fragrance. Tsunade was drinking wine alone, with a slightly satisfied look in her eyes. Haha, this kind of life is so wonderful, if only you were here, as if she was sighing or lamenting. Tsunade's face showed a little loneliness for a moment. Kid, do you want to drink something? Suddenly, Tsunade picked up the wine glass and handed it to Yuli, who was eating heartily beside her. Her cheeks were flushed and it was obvious that she was a little drunk. Eh, Lady Tsunade? Yula's still a child. You can't do this. Before Yuli could say anything, Shizune on the side immediately got furious. She stood up angrily, put one hand on her waist, stretched out her chubby little hand, and righteously rejected Tsunade's unreasonable invitation. Before he could finish his words, Yuli was suddenly startled by a figure outside the window. Teacher, why are you here? Here, teacher, this is delicious, want to try it? Picking up a piece of roasted pork belly that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, Yuli began to show her courtesy. Orochimaru shook his head, looked at Tsunade, took the shochu in front of Tsunade and started drinking it. Haha, drinking alone is so boring, let me drink with you. There was a smile on the pale face, but Yuli inexplicably felt that the atmosphere at this moment was a little weird. Cut. Tsunade didn't respond, but just opened another bottle of wine and started drinking. Tsunade, you are one of the few friends I have left. The topic seemed to have taken a turn in an unexpected direction. What do you want to say? Tsunade paused as she handed the wine to her mouth, her eyes a little confused. She didn't know what Orochimaru meant by this sentence, or rather, she felt a little strange that Orochimaru, this otaku, would actually come to find her. There are more than just rope trees and broken. Hearing this, Tsunade, who originally had a little doubt on her face, became furious like a lion whose tail was stepped on, and smashed the wine glass in her hand at Orochimaru. If you want to drink, drink. If not, get out. He caught it steadily and poured the half-spilled wine into his throat. The spicy feeling made Orochimaru feel dizzy, and his originally pale face turned a little red. War doesn't treat you differently because of your mental illness. He did stop, but his language became even more intense. Heart disease, you. Li and Jingyin, who were standing aside in such an atmosphere, didn't even breathe a breath. At this moment, Jingyin had a piece of grilled meat wrapped in lettuce in her mouth, and her little face was chubby, just like her little squirrel. Yuli suddenly had the goal of studying medical ninjutsu. The two looked at each other tacitly, and it seemed that they could see the determination to learn medical ninjutsu in each other's eyes. 4. Sister Tsunade. 4. Lady Tsunade, this is our bond. If you're here to laugh at me, you can leave now. He had a bad look on his face, with wisps of hot air coming out of his head, as if he would overturn the table and start a fight in the next second. Call. Orochimaru breathed a sigh of relief. He was indeed not a good speaker. I still hope you will think about it carefully. This is not a terminal illness. At this point, Orochimaru stopped, reached out and touched Yule's head, but his eyes were fixed on Tsunade. Even if not for yourself, he let go, picked up the wine cup, and took a sip, but his brows did not relax, and his golden pupils were full of sincerity. Sister, all this piece of meat was specially reserved for you by Shizune. It is roasted very well. Teacher, don't just drink, eat some meat. When the atmosphere became tense, two childish voices interrupted their conversation, looking at the innocent eyes of Yule and Shizune. Tsunade's original anger seemed to be doused by a basin of water, and she was dazed for a moment. The atmosphere at the scene did indeed ease a little. Why did I raise Shizune in the first place? Tsunade couldn't help but fall into memories. At first, it was because Kato-dan had only this niece, who had no father or mother and no one to take care of her. Some of the reason was because of the relationship with Kato-dan, but Tsunade didn't know. In my mind, I recalled the days when Shizune learned to take care of her at a young age, and there's that little bastard Yuli, who has the same hair color as Shengshu and always takes care of his emotions at critical moments. How much of that is because of his nostalgia for Shengshu? You have to know that bringing Yule back to the village was not as easy as it appeared on the surface, otherwise Jiraiya would not still be staying in the rain country until now. Without his help, Orochimaru would have faced a lot of difficulties facing the pressure and questioning from the elders and teachers on his own. It was indeed because of Rope Tree that I softened my heart a little, which led to Yule joining the village and being trained by Danzo. It was the result of many compromises. It seems that I have sunk too deep into memories. Tsunade no longer wanted to know how Orochimaru knew about her hemophobia, but looking at Orochimaru's attitude today, Tsunade suddenly felt a little aggrieved for no reason. This guy, guest, here are your dishes. At this time, the clerk who noticed the new customer brought a new set of bowls and chopsticks, but was rejected by Orochimaru. He slowly stood up, turned around and walked out of the store. He still had a lot of things to do. If he hadn't known that Tsunade suffered from hemophobia, he wouldn't have taken the time to come and watch them eat barbecue. As he said, Tsunade is one of his few friends, and he would say this even if it was out of concern for his friend. Otherwise, how can we expect that old perverted, drunkard, straight man Jiraiya who is still in the rain country to remember to help Tsunade get rid of her inner demons? Just kidding bro, sister, I will always be here, Tsunade-sama. Shizune will not leave you, too. Voices sounded at the same time, lingering in Tsunade's ears. Tsunade lowered her head and looked at Yule and Shizune, who were staring at her with determination. She suddenly felt her eyes become a little moist. She quickly drank a glass of wine to suppress the moisture and wiped away the marks at the corners of her eyes so that the two would not notice anything. You two little brats, eat your barbecue, really, although. She said this, Tsunade's tone was obviously gentler at this time. Orochimaru stopped at the door and turned around. Tsunade, hearing Orochimaru calling her, Tsunade raised her head. Boom, a loud thunder flashed across the sky, and the pale lightning illuminated the entire world, making Orochimaru look pale. Only his golden vertical pupils remained, without the coldness of the past. We're always here, I promise. The sound was somewhat drowned out by the thunder, and the heavy rain that washed the earth poured down, blurring everything that could be seen, including the thin figure that disappeared in the rain. Always, always. Here, he. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Kushina and number 039, S Enrollment. The days that followed were like a pool of stagnant water, but Yuli did not reject this kind of life. Every morning when he got up, he would first read the medical books brought by Tsunade, then go to school on time and listen to the teacher's lessons. I have to say that Orochimaru is worthy of being a man who came from the battlefield. Although he looks sick, the quality of his teaching is impeccable, half theory and half practice, and he is never empty-handed. In the morning, we teach the history of the ninja world, weapons, intelligence gathering, and basic interrogation knowledge. There is also the unshakable will of fire, but every time Mr. Orochimaru talks about it, it seems very stiff, which means that maybe he himself doesn't remember it. Orochimaru will teach these things to his students without reservation. In the afternoon, we started practical training, throwing exercises and student sparring. Orochimaru has a corresponding plan for each person's situation. After a month, Yuli gradually became familiar to everyone. He was a boy with flaxen brown hair at the ends and reddish-brown hair at the roots. He always had a gentle smile on his face and was polite to others, but there was always a sense of alienation, and it was difficult to really get close to him. He was a boy with super practical ability. He has also become the new male god for many little girls. Well, competing with Yuli are the little son Namake's Minato and the arrogant clan member Uchiha Kingfang. They are all students who rank higher in sparring. Among them, Yuli has long occupied the first place. Namake's Minato has always been the second, and Uchiha Kingfang is competing with a girl named Hinata Hisoha for the third place. As a big family in Konoha, it is only natural for them to occupy this position, but they feel uncomfortable being stepped on by a commoner like Minato. Namake's Yuli only has a relatively better relationship with Minato. Namake's. He is already tired enough after a day and does not have the mood or energy to engage in useless socializing. Cough cough. Classmates, there is a new student in our class today. Please applaud and welcome him. Orochimaru, who was in class, was interrupted. He left the classroom a few minutes later and brought back a little red-haired girl. She looked to be the same age as Yuli and the others, with a slightly timid look on her face, and she looked at the classmates around her with some fear. The others looked at the girl, who suddenly turned around and stared at her red hair curiously. Hey, Mikal, her hair looks like a tomato. Yeah, my mom loves tomatoes, but I hate them. Ha 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 ha, me too. What are you doing there? The not-so-small sound from below reached the ears of the girl and Orochimaru, causing Orochimaru's face to darken. Don't be afraid, introduce yourself to everyone, patting the girl's shoulder gently. Yuichiro's face showed a rare hint of tenderness. Hello, everyone. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. You can just call me Kushina. My dream is to become someone like Hokage. Nice to meet you all. Please give me your guidance in the future. Her face flushed. Kushina bowed deeply, fiddling with a corner of her clothes with her fingers, but the following performance was not as she hoped. What? A weird hair, tomato, hearing the discussions from below. Kushina, who was already in a strange place and felt insecure, face turned even redder. Tears welled up in her eyes and she tried hard not to let them fall. What are you guys saying? Madaka, Mika, Katsura Kabashi, Hijikura Oki. All of you, stand at the back. You're standing there listening to the class today. You have no respect for your elders. The boys who were named looked dissatisfied, but they didn't dare to disobey Yuichiro, so they could only stand up reluctantly, but they looked at Kushina with anger in their eyes. Okay, find an empty seat and sit down first. Come to the office to pick up your books after class this afternoon. Well, thank you, teacher. Kushina bowed slightly and looked around the classroom. Only a few people looked at her without any malice. Among them are Namake's Minato, Yule, Hinata Hisahi, and Uchiha Sike's. However, the girl she wanted to sit with the most was already taken, and Namake's Minato had always been popular, so naturally there was no empty seat. The only ones left were the cold-faced man Uchiha Kingfang and Yuli, who was sitting by the window in the back row and had slightly turned his head to look at the scenery outside the window. Well, tightening the corners of her clothes, Kushina walked to Yuli in small steps. Hello, classmate. Is there anyone next to you? Huh? No one? Okay, thanks. Kushina breathed a sigh of relief. At least she had found a spot, and took out a candy from her pocket and handed it to Yule. Please have some candy. It's very sweet. Yule was stunned for a moment, then smiled and took the candy that Kushina handed over. Teacher, Yule and the other two are eating candy. Suddenly, Katsura Kabashi and others who were standing in the back suddenly shouted and reported Kushina and Yule. Yule, you two, stand up and listen to the class. Yuichiro didn't ask Kushina to stand up, and Yule was sitting in the last row, so he had to stand in his seat and listen to the class. I'm sorry. I didn't expect this. Kushina's face flushed red, and she looked at Yule with an apologetic look. She was about to stand up and explain to Yuichiro. Yule shook her head, gently pushed Kushina down, who was about to stand up, and smiled at her indifferently, but when he turned around and looked at the three people who were grinning, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. It seems that I have too good a temper. Thinking of this, Yuli shook his head gently again, no longer caring about it, and started reading the medical book by himself. Yuichiro explained very well, but the progress was still too slow for Yuli, and he didn't intend to waste time like this. No one else paid attention. Only Minato Namikaze, who was sitting in the front, turned back thoughtfully. Tsunade only gave herself 1 month, and as the time was running out, she had to read it twice more to consolidate her knowledge. Soon, the morning classes ended and it was time for lunch. Hey, Damu, yes, it's just the three of you. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Lee stopped Mika and others who were about to go out for dinner, and walked towards them with a smile on his face. What do you want to do? That's right, Yule, the teacher said. No fighting in school. Feeling Yuli's unfriendly eyes, several people couldn't help but think of Yuli's violent figure during the sparring, and shuddered. Haha, let's go over there and talk. Lee moved her joints, making crackling sounds. Bang, bang, bang. What? Lee killed someone. Hurry and find the teacher, brother. I was wrong. Woo. Woo woo. I need to find my mom. A bunch of little brats. Yuli pursed her lips and glanced with disdain at the few people who were huddled in the corner, covering their faces and wiping tears from their eyes. She wiped her hands gently and returned to her original position as if nothing had happened. Yule, the teacher won't cause you any trouble, will he? It's okay. By the way, did you bring lunch? Lee shook his head, not caring about the consequences of doing so. Besides, he didn't hit her hard, it was just a superficial injury. Teacher Yuichiro wouldn't make trouble for him because of this. Besides, would he dare? Oh, it seems like he really dares, but as a teacher who came back from the battlefield, Yuichiro would not call the parents for such a small matter. This is beyond his scope. Young people should solve their own problems today. Yuli has already reached the level of a Jinan, and facing these peers can be said to be a dimensionality reduction attack. No, I didn't bring it. He was saying this, Minato suddenly stepped aside. Let's eat together, Kushina looked up and saw Minato Namikaze, who was smiling innocently and handing her the lunchbox. Thank you, but no thanks. Although she was quite surprised, Kushina still did not accept Minato's kindness. After all, she and Minato had just met and were not yet at the stage where they could have dinner together. Eat mine. Seeing this, Yuli sighed helplessly and took out his lunchbox, an extra-large deluxe special nutritious meal that can barely be recognized as food for human consumption. To be honest, Yuli didn't really want to take out his meal. He didn't know how those uncles and sisters at the root made such nutritious food into the state. However, what could he do facing Kushina, who had just become his deskmate, and the big fool sitting next to him who only knew how to laugh? Yule, can I eat this, Namikaze? Minato was the first to break the silence and asked Kushina's inner thoughts, whose face changed a little. Please. Is this gray, sticky, lumpy stuff really edible? Yuli had such a miserable life. For a moment, even Kushina felt sympathy for Yule. As the princess of the Whirlpool country, she had never even seen such a thing and didn't know whether it was edible, but looking at Yuli's expression, this is indeed a normal meal for him. So pitiful. Hey. What's with that expression on your face, please? This is a specially prepared nutritious meal, very good for physical development. Anyway, Kushina has found a new anchor in Konoha, and so has Yule. Chapter 16, The Red Devil. The next group, Uzumaki Kushina vs Madakala Mako. Hey, red-haired devil, there's no Yule to help you this time, Mako. Knock her down for me, come on. Mako. In the afternoon, the sky was clear and the weather was nice. We were having a combat training at the ninja school training ground. The students of class 7 of the first year class were standing scattered around the field, watching Kushina with curiosity as she walked towards the center of the training ground. Madakala Mako, whose face was still covered in bruises, lit up his eyes when he heard that he was fighting against Uzumaki Kushina. He instantly looked with ill intent at Kushina, who was following Yuli and Namikaze Minato not far away, and smiled obscenely. I will definitely knock you down this time. Having made up his mind secretly, Madakala Mako's face showed an obscene smile, which made Kushina, who was looking over, feel a chill in her heart. Although she was new to Konoha and lacked a sense of security, she was unwilling to take the initiative to cause trouble, but if trouble really came to her, she would tell those who were taking advantage of her. She is Uzumaki Kushina. She is not a vegetarian. Seal of opposition. As the two of them formed the opposing seal at the same time, Kushina moved, like a red civet cat, and instantly rushed towards Madakala Mako. Hateful. For a moment, Madakala Mako only saw a red figure, and in the blink of an eye a fist rushed towards him. The fist was so fierce that Madakala Mako dodged hurriedly and turned sideways to avoid Kushina's fist. Seeing that her punch missed, Kushina stopped and kicked out with a sweeping kick that broke through the wind and hit Madakala Mako in the chest. Madakala Mako was unable to dodge and was hit in the abdomen. Thump. Grabbing the ground with both hands, 2 marks appeared on the ground. Madakala Mako groaned, his face flushed. He stood up and looked at Kushina fiercely. Humph, you attack me from behind. I won't be polite to you. As he said this, Madakala Mako bared his teeth, like a tiger, and rushed towards Kushina with the wind under his feet. Kushina changed her moves flexibly. Under the gaze of everyone, the two of them quickly exchanged blows, punching and kicking each other, making crisp collision sounds. Seeing that he couldn't take down Kushina after a long time of attack, Madakala Mako wiped the sweat that ran across his nose. A trace of anger flashed across his face, and he quickly drew out a kunai and ran towards Kushina. As the princess of the Whirlpool country, Kushina naturally received an elite education since childhood, which is incomparable to that of Madakala Mako. Seeing this, he snorted softly, and suddenly wrapped himself in a red translucent coat, exuding a tyrannical aura. Kushina's eyes instantly became a little colder. Hey, big fox, let's beat that guy down together. Corresponding to the blood-red coat was Kushina's skyrocketing speed and strength. With a push of his feet, a small hole was suddenly created on the ground. At this time, Madakala Mako could no longer see Kushina's figure. This, boom, a fist shadow flashed by, and Madakala Mako was knocked back 10 meters. Before he landed, the red figure arrived at the designated location faster than him and punched him again. Swah. Clap. After several slaps in a row, Madakala Mako's face swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wow, the 2 teeth, covered with crystal saliva, flew several meters away in the sunlight and fell to the ground. Fortunately, people in this world generally have strong physical fitness. If it were on the aquamarine star, Yuli thought of some horrible things and couldn't help but shudder. Suddenly, Madakalamikal started crying, bringing Yuli back to reality. Upon closer inspection, he found that the boy was crying because of being beaten by Kushina. Kushina, who was originally preparing to throw a few more punches, saw Madakalamikal kneeling on the ground crying loudly, and she lost interest for a moment, pursed her lips, and retracted the nine tails chakra. It's boring looking at the other people in the class. Few people dared to look at her. The seal of reconciliation. The ground in the training ground today is really hard, the sand is really sandy, and the ants are really ants. After this battle, Kushina's nickname of the Red Devil became completely known and became a nickname secretly used by those who were afraid of her but dared not say it openly. After this commotion, Yuichiro no longer had the idea of letting his classmates continue with the actual training. He hurriedly assigned today's homework to everyone and hurried towards the Hokage building. At this time, in the Hokage building office, Hiruzen, leave the nine tails Jinchuriki to me, Danzo. You know this is impossible. Only by placing her at the root can the Jinchuriki's effect be maximized. Just train Yuli well. I can promise you to train the nine tails Jinchuriki and Yule together. That won't do. Kushina, as an orphan of the Whirlpool country, I can't let down Master Minato. Call. As soon as these words came out, the arrogant Danzo on the side was speechless for a moment. It was like this again. Hiruzen always liked to stand on the highest moral point to refute himself, but sometimes he couldn't solve him. Hiruzen. You will regret it, Danzo. I am the Hokage, Wulusei. Japanese translation. I'm so annoyed, it's obvious that I have become much better. Okay. Hiruzen smacked his lips and exhaled a cloud of thick smoke. He looked at his old friend who had calmed down, and Midamanen and Utane Kaharu who were sitting on both sides taking a neutral stance. Hiruzen's side, his tone softening slightly. Danzo, Mito-sama's wish is for Kushina to live happily and healthily in Konoha. Let's leave it at that, just like that. Sarutobi. Hiruzen put an end to this matter regardless of the aspect. Hiruzen hopes that Kushina can develop a bond with Konoha and have a sense of belonging. This is the will of fire that the first generation conveyed. So what? So what? I'm awesome, right? A Hatoha, Akimachi barbecue restaurant. As a barbecue restaurant opened by the Akimachi clan, the taste is among the best in the whole Konoha. Kushina treated Yule and Minato to a barbecue. This was Minato's first time here. As a civilian, the cost of a meal here was enough for him to eat several times elsewhere, but this is just a drop in the bucket for Kushina. For her, who owns the inheritance of the Whirlpool country, this amount of money is not even a fraction of the rent she collects. Yes, Kushina owns the largest commercial street in Konoha, but this is not all of her assets. Even the Akimachi barbecue restaurant under her feet has to pay rent to Kushina now. Kushina's guardian is nominally Tsunade. After all, the two are relatives by blood. However, Kushina was unwilling to bother Tsunade about these trivial matters. She also had her own temper and pride. These were just conflicts between children, too. Our friendship. Cheers. Several little guys were holding juice with smiles on their faces not far away. Tsunade was watching this scene with a toothpick in her mouth, looking pleased. As Kushina's elder, she naturally had to pay attention to her. However, she didn't plan to show up unless there was something going on. It would be a good thing for Kushina to find her friends, not to mention that Yuli was also there. What a hassle. I have to go find that guy Orochimaru later. Thinking about going to Orochimaru to find a cure for hemophobia, Tsunade felt a headache. Sigh. No one noticed Tsunade's departure, and the three people who were eating and drinking didn't notice that Yuli was competing with Kushina to see who was the biggest eater. Minato left the battlefield early, holding his stomach in discomfort, and looked at the two people who were still competing with a look of admiration. He knew that Yule was a big eater, but who would have thought that such a little girl could eat so much? It really broadened his horizons. I won't lose. This place seems pretty good. A young man who was still eating and drinking thought to himself. Chapter 17, The Sudden Disappearance of Yuli. In the evening, at the Konoha training ground, today the sky is cloudless, and a cool breeze blows a few fallen leaves. Tsukuru, Minato, and Kushina were training in battle. Although Minato's natural keen observation and reaction, Kushina's huge chakra are talents that Yuli cannot learn. Fighting against these different types of opponents can also improve his experience and skills with his super physical recovery ability. He can accept higher intensity training than others and his growth rate will not be slow. Whoosh, whoosh whoosh, Yule, be careful. Minato was extremely fast. With several shurikens approaching, Minato appeared behind Yule holding a kunai. Yule swung his hand back sonorous. There is no collision. Minato missed his attack and immediately retreated. Several clones appeared at the same time, confusing Yuli's vision. Who is the real one? Frowning slightly, Yuli's speed was not as fast as Minato's. Now he watched Minato's clone approaching at the same time. HMPH. Fire style, great fireball technique. At this moment, when several clones of Minato suddenly approached, Yuli's lips curled up into a smile. He formed seals with his hands, and suddenly spewed out more a blazing fireball with a diameter of half a meter from his mouth. I rely on. Wow. Yule is so amazing. Sitting on the edge of the training ground, eating spicy chicken feet in one hand and fried chicken legs in the other, Kushina's eyes lit up when she saw this scene. Come on, people who can spit fireballs are really handsome, right? Boom, puff puff puff. As the fireball made contact, several clones turned into smoke and dissipated, leaving only Minato's real body, who suddenly stepped back to avoid the fireball. At this moment, Minato's eyes were full of envy. He was just a commoner, and the school did not teach any ninjutsu other than the three-body technique. Of course, with Minato's talent, he would be able to learn it sooner or later, but that did not prevent him from envying Yuli at this moment. Where have you gone? Minato, who had escaped the danger, suddenly found that Yuli was no longer there. He couldn't find him for a while. At this moment, a cold touch touched his neck. Looks like you lost, Minato. You. Lee had a smile on his face, but the next moment, he stopped where he was. He saw Shui Men, whose neck was pressed by Yuli's kunai, suddenly turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared on the spot, falling onto a wooden stake on the ground, almost in the sky above. The sound of Minato rang out, backing away at high speed, with the corners of his mouth stretched upward. Yuli felt a little excited. It still has to be you. The clanging sounds continued until Minato was exhausted. He was not known for his stamina to begin with, and after another unsuccessful attempt at a surprise attack, he was no longer able to continue and chose to admit defeat. Minato was helpless. He still couldn't beat Yuli. He really needed to work harder. Yoshi. Gangba. Okay, everyone is awesome. Come on, the fried chicken is getting cold. Look at me. Fire style, great fireball. Shut up. My fried chicken. Yule. Do you want to die? In the middle of the night, lying in bed, for a moment, Yuli was a little confused. The traces left by Konoha on him seemed to be getting deeper and deeper. Is this the bond that the third generation talked about? Teacher, sister, Grandpa Danzo, Uncle Quing, Minato, Kushina, but I don't seem to have their dedication. Yuli knows that he is really a very selfish person. His first priority is always to survive and live well. His pupils were empty and Yuli was really confused at this moment. After all, he was just a 6-year-old child who had been pampered since childhood. Even with the experience of more than a year, it could not change the fact that he was still a child. He doesn't handle emotional matters very well. Yuli didn't sleep well that night, which made him rarely get up to read the next morning. Watanabe Queen didn't know what happened, but just thought that Yuli wanted to be lazy for a day, so he didn't ignore it. Morning, Uncle Quing. Well, Master, did you not sleep well? A little bit. By the way, Uncle Quing, what are you holding? This is your medical kit, young master. Starting this afternoon, Lady Tsunade will officially begin teaching you medical ninjutsu. Oh, okay, put it here. Okay, Master. Watanabe Quing paused, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. It was the first time that Yuli acted so calm, which made him feel something was wrong. Yuli did not react to the abnormality that Watanabe Quing felt. His mind was still in a daze and he didn't know how to deal with it. Hurry up and go to school. You're going to be late. Oh, okay, Uncle Quing, I'll be leaving first then. Shaking her head, Yuli took her backpack and walked towards the school. That's what happened, sir. Tell me, has Yuli received any blow? Watanabe Quing stood respectfully in front of Danzo, his tone sounding a little uncertain. This was the first time that Yule had encountered such a situation, which made her a little worried. Oh. Got it. Pay more attention to Yule from now on. Tell me if anything happens. Okay, sir, I'll take my leave now. Watanabe Ao quietly retreated, closing the door behind him. leaving Danzo alone in the office, tapping his fingers on the table, as if thinking about something. This kid Yuli is really a cause of worry, too. Outsiders, Danzo, who looked eerie and scary, actually had a hint of subtle tenderness on his face at this moment. Humans are not plants or trees, so who can be heartless? One day, not only Watanabe-kun discovered Yule's abnormality, but his friends Yongdame and Kushina also found that there was obviously something wrong with Yule's condition. Yule, what's wrong with you? Come on, I'll treat you guys to barbecue today. It's my treat. Kushina and Minato didn't know how to comfort Yule. They didn't even know what had happened. Minato even suggested treating Yule to hot roast. Forget it, you guys go ahead, I'm fine, I'm leaving first, see you tomorrow. Yule didn't react at all. He just said something coldly and walked towards the route, leaving Minato and Kushina standing there at a loss. They didn't know what happened to Yuli and could only scratch their heads. Then, shall we go eat? Kushina looked at Minato in silence, quite speechless. Go eat it yourself. Oh my god. Minato stamped his feet, with an innocent look on his face, and followed Kushina in the direction of Yule. Little ghost, what's wrong with you today? No, it's nothing, sister, let's get started. At Konoha's number 7 training ground, 2 tables were placed in the middle. Today's training was not chosen at the route. Tsunade did not like the dark and dull environment of the route. Seeing that Yule was obviously in a bad condition, Tsunade did not start teaching directly, but instead asked about Yule's condition. Shizune, who was standing quietly beside Tsunade, also looked at Yule with some concern. Come on, tell me what happened. Did that old fellow Danzo bully you? I'll avenge you. Humph. You, Tsunade, only know how to slander me. How could I bully my own grandson? As soon as these words were spoken, Danzo, who appeared at the training ground, heard them. Well, the person to whom he was addressed had heard me saying bad things. What should I do? It's urgent. Tsunade was a little embarrassed, then started asking about Yuli's condition as if nothing had happened. Danzo was still wearing a black kimono. His face was a little pale due to not seeing the sun for a long time. There were several scars on his face, making him look a little ferocious, which made Shizune subconsciously hide behind Tsunade. Yule, come here. Grandpa, why are you here? Lee didn't think Danzo was vicious. After all, he knew very well how Danzo had treated him over the past year, and he should be grateful. Tell Grandpa, what happened to you today? Lee's mouth moved, as if it was slightly open, but no sound came out. Her brows were furrowed, not knowing what to say. When Danzo saw this, his already ferocious face furrowed even more. Seeing that Yule seemed to have something to hide, Tsunade immediately said to Yule softly, it's nothing, Yule, if you really don't want to say it, forget it. But you have to know that your sister is always by your side, just like you said, isn't it? Me too. Shizune, who was hiding behind Tsunade, also popped her head out, waving her little fists, glanced at Yule, glanced up, noticed that Danzo was looking at her, and then quickly shrank back. Although her voice was a little small, her tone was firm. Danzo pinched his brows and eased his emotions a little. It was Yule who was happy. If it were any other member of the route, would they dare to keep silent? That would be disloyalty, and they would be tortured until they told the truth. But after all, Yuli is his grandson. He has been raising him for more than a year, and he has developed feelings for him. Calm down your tone a bit, Yule. Grandpa doesn't know what happened to you. Everyone has their own secrets. If you don't want to tell me, Grandpa won't force you to tell me. But you have to remember that this is Konoha, your home. You have to remember that if you are bullied, your elders will support you. Don't bear it alone, Grandpa, sister, Shizune, there are us too, Yule, you can't forget about us. Suddenly, 2 little huds popped out from the bushes not far away. They were Minato and Kushina, who had followed Yuli all the way. Danzo and the others naturally knew that the 2 little guys were hiding nearby, but no one cared about them. Lee suddenly felt the corners of her eyes moist. It's so windy today, there's sand in my eyes. Danzo didn't say anything. He was very happy that Yule could find his own bond in Konoha. As for Yuli not saying anything about this matter, is that a big deal? Everyone has their own secrets. He himself has countless secrets that he cannot show to others. So what, Grandpa? I want to eat hot pot. Okay, let's eat hot pot today. Hot pot is a novel way of eating proposed by Yule a few months ago. It is a lively way of eating where ingredients are placed in a copper pot and eaten while being boiled. It became popular in a small area right after it came out. He remembered that this was his favorite delicacy in the village. Once the hot pot was heated, the cold air would come out and his body would be warm. Tsunade scratched her head. She had originally planned to teach Yule and Shizune some simple medical ninjutsu today, but given the current situation, that didn't seem to be the right thing to do. Well, let's eat hot pot. We need to invite Orochimaru along. He's called teacher, but he's still not paying attention. Really, Minato and Kushina didn't know what hot pot was yet, so they just followed Yule in confusion as they headed to the Hokage building. On the rooftop of the Hokage building, several lights illuminate the place, and a copper pot consisting of a large circle and a small circle is placed in the middle. A large pile of ingredients was placed aside, and Yule, Minato, Kushina, Tsunade, Orochimaru, Danzo, Sarutobi and others gathered around the table, with fragrant vapor floating in the air. Smelling the aroma of this unique way of eating, Minato swallowed his saliva. Why, come to find Yule, and then eat with a group of big shots. There was a box of shacha under Tsunade's feet. Her face was flushed and she was playing finger guessing with Orochimaru. However, as a gambler, she had already drunk more than 10 cups. She stood up with an unconvinced look on her face, stepped on the wine box in her flip-flops, pulled up her sleeves, and looked unconvinced. Shizune tried to dissuade Tsunade, but it was of no use. Yuli had a smile on her face, no longer showing the melancholy she had during the day, but the confusion in her eyes still remained. However, no one noticed it for a while. It was Kushina's first time eating this kind of food, and her appetite was aroused. She was frantically clearing the food in the pot. Shizune was also adding ingredients to the pot from time to time, so it could be said that she was taking care of both sides. Danzo and Sarutobi drank their wine with a smile on their faces, and clinked their glasses gently as they looked at the harmonious scene in front of them. Isn't this peaceful day what they are pursuing? Yuli was eating by himself. He just missed his father and mother, mom and dad. For a moment, Yuli's eyes were filled with confusion, as if he had forgotten something. Is he missing something? Hey, what was I thinking about just now? Shaking his head, Yuli's eyes became dazed for a moment. Looking up, I saw Minato glance at Kushina from time to time, and I couldn't help but laugh. Who cares? It shouldn't be a big deal. Hey, Kushina, Minato is spying on you. Yule, you are disloyal. Good. On you, Minato. Take my kick. Ha. Ha ha ha. It's really nice here. Chapter 18, The Little Tree Sprouts. Welcome to the world of ninja. A year passes by like a flash. Spring goes and autumn comes in the blink of an eye. Yuli has been in Konoha for nearly 2.5 years today. The sky's like a blue gem, crystal clear, with white clouds floating leisurely outside the Konoha training ground. The lush and verdant trees looked like a green castle. The dense layers of branches were like filters, filtering out most of the sunlight, and only a few beams of light passed through the gaps between the leaves and fell on the ground. A breeze blows gently, the leaves rustle, and the flowers and grass on the grass sway slightly, emitting bursts of fragrance, which is refreshing of course. This kind of comfort only belongs to Tsunade, who is sleeping leaning against a big tree in an open space not far away. Yuli and Jingyin were looking at the rabbit in front of them with serious eyes. Their minds kept recalling the knowledge points in the medical books and Tsunade's teachings, and their hands glowed green looking at the dying rabbit on the table. Its internal organs were severely damaged. The overflowing blood dyed its snow white for red, and it twitched from time to time. Yuli took a deep breath, and the chakra in her hands quickly condensed. The rich breath of life wrapped the rabbit like a green gauze, and her hands, which were glowing green, were slightly suspended above the rabbit's abdomen. The same thing happened to Jingyin beside her, but the light in her hand was different from Yuli's, and it was light green. As time went by, Shizune's breathing became rapid and sweat continued to seep out. The light in her hand became dim. Obviously, with such a serious injury, the chakra required for the rabbit to recover was too huge. At this time, Shizune had reached her limit. Jingyin encouraged herself in her heart, and out of the corner of her eye she saw Yule beside her had finished her work and was gently stroking the rabbit in her arms that had regained its vitality. Seeing Jingyin's gaze, Yule's eyes were filled with encouragement. Come on. Shizune, nodding, Shizune bit her gums as a sudden burst of new chakra burst out of her body. After a while, finally, the rabbit in front of Shizune was healed, and its ruby-like eyes sparkled brightly in the sunlight. Jingyin's face turned pale, and she looked at Yule beside her with some discouragement. The gap was really incomparable. Yuli's chakra contains abundant vitality. With the same amount of chakra, the effect of performing medical ninjutsu is much better than Shizune. It is also for this reason that Yuli always consumes less chakra than others to treat the same injury. Over the past year, the two have gone to the hospital every week to study and assist the doctors. Later, they gradually took over some patients with mild illnesses to improve their knowledge and skills, but till now, Yuli's skills are still not as proficient as Shizune's. It's just that the powerful chakra makes the ninjutsu he performs look more powerful. Okay, it looks like the results are good. Starting tomorrow you two can try to take over some minor surgeries. Tsunade glanced at the rabbits that Shizune released and said nothing. They were just two unlucky rabbits that were caught at the last minute. It didn't matter whether she released them or not. Who knows, she could catch them again next time. Throughout the year, Yul has been working with the grassroots, schools, and hospitals up to now. He has learned more than 10 B-level and C-level ninjutsu, and his chakra capacity has reached the level of elite chunin. If it weren't for Danzo's pressure, Yuli would have wanted to graduate from the ninja school early. After all, he couldn't learn anything in school anymore. Now even Orochimaru was no match for him. If it weren't for Kushina and Minato still in school, Yuli probably wouldn't want to go to school, but according to Yuli's progress, by the time he graduates, he will at least be able to reach the level of a special jonin, or even go a step further and reach the level of a normal jonin. With the corners of her mouth slightly raised, Yuli began to look forward to her future lifetime flows. The seasons change, the annual rings of old trees are stacked layer by layer, the grass breaks through the ground, and the bleak flowers compete for beauty again. The long river of time rolls forward. For Yuli, the past few years in the ninja school were the most comfortable 3 years he had ever lived as the young master of the root. Yuli's every word and action is closely watched. He found new bonds and forged deep friendships with Minato, Kushina, Shizune and others, gradually forming a small group. More smiles gradually appeared on Danzo's face from the moment Yuli stepped into the root. His information had been constantly updated and iterated by people like Hiruzen and Danzo. Everyone witnessed Yuli's amazing growth. His outstanding medical ninjutsu, physical skills, and learning ability were commendable, and his exquisite control of chakra was even more impressive. However, with the careful teaching of Watanabe and Tsunade, it is reasonable for Yuli to achieve such success. Haha, Konoha's saplings are starting to thrive, Sarutobi. Hiruzen chuckled and took a puff of cigarette. As the big tree of Konoha, it was their responsibility to protect the young saplings and let them grow healthily. Isn't it a kind of enjoyment and happiness to watch these saplings grow gradually? Call out, Hokage-sama. Jiraiya-sama has returned from the rain country. A figure wearing an Anbu uniform and an animal mask on his face appeared in front of Sarutobi. After reporting the news, he waited quietly for Sarutobi's next instruction. Only when Sarutobi Hiruzen waved his hand to let him leave did he bow slightly and disappear quietly like a black shadow. Sarutobi Hiruzen had a smile on his face. The three ninjas had already gathered, and there were many good talents in this class, so it was a good opportunity for them to focus and guide the students. The sky is a little gloomy today, and the air is filled with thick moisture, making people feel a little uncomfortable. Yuli sat at the table board, quietly waiting for the result of the class division. Minato and Kushina on the side were excitedly discussing which ninja they would be assigned to. Yuli naturally had no interest in all this. His team leader was destined 3 years ago. Orochimaru would be his team leader. The rest was just guessing who would be his teammate. I hope it's not too weak. In fact, he still hoped to be in the same team with Minato and Kushina. After all, they were familiar with each other, and both of them were strong and could at least keep up with his progress on the podium. Orochimaru weakly told everyone that they had officially become the glorious Konoha Jonin. As Orochimaru finished his words, the atmosphere in the classroom instantly reached a climax. There were no warm congratulations or joyful celebrations for their graduation, only a bland graduation from Orochimaru. This is nothing to celebrate. 3 years later, he will stand here again and say this to a group of Jonin who are full of dreams and expectations for the future. By then, these students will leave the campus and officially face this complex world. As for how many of these students will be able to stick to it by then, it is hard to predict. However, before leaving the classroom, Orochimaru still looked around at his classmates deeply, as if he wanted to imprint their appearance deeply in his mind. He spent the longest time on Yul, Kushina, Minato, Uchiha Kingfeng, Hinata Hisaho and others, as if he was looking through them into the distant future. The strong have a higher chance of survival no matter where they are. Finally, Orochimaru raised his hand, gently stroked the class number, and without saying anything else, turned around and walked out of the classroom. Grade 3, Class 7, don't die so easily, you. The moment he walked out of the classroom, A hint of sadness flashed across Utachiro's eyes. Welcome to the world of ninja, my dear students. Ninjas are a group that is precarious at any time. They walk on the brink of life and death, and they don't know when they will face death. In this era where peace is barely maintained, it is not so bad. A few years later, if 1/3 of these children can survive, it will be considered a high survival rate. After Utachiro left, everyone in the classroom could no longer sit still and began a heated discussion. After graduation, there will be an elite Chunin or Jonin leading the team, with 3 Jonin in a group to form a team. At this time, the graduates finally went through 3 years of study, passed the graduation examination and graduated successfully, becoming a glorious Jonin. Feeling the slightly cool ninja forehead protector on my forehead, I felt extremely excited. Yuli felt the stuffiness and solemnity outside the window. Graduation didn't seem that happy after all. Ugh, I sighed. Who will be my teammates? Soon, the leading Chunin or Jonin came to the classroom one by one and took their team members away. Madako, Miko, Sasaki-ken, Watanabe Hiroshi. Follow me, Ando, Miki, Shimizu Yuri, Nakajima Shunai, come here, Inu, Taro, Yamamoto Ichi, Suzuki Yumiko, come here. As more and more people were called away, there were fewer people in the classroom, and there were more and more vacant seats. When I looked back looking at the empty classroom, Yuli was a little dazed for a moment. His memory was actually quite good. After 3 years, he could remember the faces of every classmate in the classroom. I've already graduated. La la, finally there are only a few of us left. Attracted by Minato's voice, Yuli turned around and saw that there were only 6 people left in the classroom, including him, Hinata Hisaha, Namake's Minato, Uzumaki Kushina, and some people Yule doesn't know. Depending on the situation, Yule still has a chance to be in the same team with Minato and Kushina at this time. A man with white hair, 2 bars extending from his eyes downwards, wearing a tactical vest, holding a book titled Intimate Paradise in his hand, with a lewd smile on his face. I am the Toad Sage of Myaboku Mountain. Who are Namake's Minato, Harada, and Takuchi Yukino. Follow me, it's actually Lord Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas. Great. Minato, come here. Let's go, Harada. And Takuchi Yukino's eyes lit up when they saw that their team leader was Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas. They instantly became excited and ran towards Jiraiya in 2 steps, coming. Yule, Kushina, I'm leaving first. Hearing his teammates calling him, Minato waved to Tsukal and Kushina and left the classroom with his companions. Jiraiya. It's great that you and Sensei are both Sannin. Yule, it seems we are a team. At this time, only Yuli, Hinata Hisaha, and Uzumaki Kushina were left in the classroom. Hinata Hisaha stood up, walked down from his seat, walked straight to Yuli and the other person, and greeted them. Hinata Hisaha, please give me more guidance from Yule-kun and Kushina-san from now on. Lee raised his head, glanced at Hinata Hisaha, who had stopped showing his forehead since who knows when, and nodded slightly. Yule, please give me more guidance in the future. Yule, do you know who our team leader is? Konoha. Lenkun, Orochimaru is one of the 3 ninjas along with Jiraiya. After a moment's silence, looking at the expectant eyes of Kushina and Hisahi, Yuli did not keep the secret, as there was no need to. Hey, the 2 exclamations made Yuli cover her ears and look at the 2 people in front of her helplessly. I say, you 2, this is not necessary. Who said it's unnecessary? He is the disciple of the Hokage. The genius ninja Orochimaru. Yes, I never thought that I could become Lord Orochimaru's student. I am so lucky. Hinata Hisaha was also very confused at this time. You know, although she was a member of the Hyuga clan, a large family in Konoha, she was only a member of a branch family of the Hyuga clan, and she was a member of the clan that was engraved as a bird in a cage since birth. Being able to become Lord Orochimaru's disciple is a treatment that only members of the main family can have. Becoming Lord Orochimaru's disciple means joining the lineage of Lord Hokage, who after taking a deep look at Yuli, Hinata Hisae knew that this must be Yuli's fault. But no matter what, from today on, her fate will change a little bit. At least she will not become a tool for marriage. Even if the master doesn't care about her, he has to care about Orochimaru behind her. Call, moon. Music, huh? What's wrong? Nothing, please. Give me your guidance in the future. Oh, okay, thank you for your guidance. Chapter 19. Tell me about your dream. Konoha, the commercial street, is full of bustling and lively atmosphere. Jiraiya, who was walking in front, had a worried look on his face. He glanced at a few little kids who were following behind him and secretly looking at him with a helpless look on their faces. I just returned to Konoha, and before I had time to appreciate the new beautiful scenery of the women's bathhouse, I was recruited by my teacher to the Hokage building. That's fine, but I have to lead a team of kids who just graduated from the ninja school. Can't you just give yourself a break? However, as soon as he refused, the teacher evaded him by saying that Konoha was short of people and Orochimaru would also bring a team of students. What else could he do? In order to take care of Yohiko, Konan and Nagato, he had been staying outside for the past 3 years and had made no contribution to the village. He was still his teacher's disciple. The village was in need of people right now, and there was nothing he could do no matter how unwilling he was. He wanted to go around and collect materials while looking for a savior to contribute to his work. Scratched his head. He brought the 3 of them to the Konoha training ground and looked at the little kids who were either restrained, excited, or fiddling with the kunai in their hands. Please, I have no experience in raising children. Cough. Cough. He coughed twice, shifting everyone's attention to himself. Jiraiya straightened his clothes and his eyes instantly became sharp, but the book in his hand that he never put down made people feel a little distracted. Well, it's our first meeting, so please introduce yourselves briefly. Let me go first. My name is Namikaze Minato. My hobby is enjoying delicious food and my dream is to become a Hokage. Well, it's a nice dream. Keep it up. My name is Takuchi Yukino. My hobby is growing flowers, and my dream is to escape the marriage arranged by my family. Yoshi, fight for your dreams. It's my turn. My name is Hirata. My hobby is fitness. My dream is to open my own martial arts gym. Mom, these are all great dreams. So, let's keep working hard for our dreams. Steelbird, he commented on the dreams of several people one after another. This can be regarded as an old tradition of Konoha. As a direct descendant of the Hokage, Jiraiya naturally would not give up the opportunity to get to know several people. However, thinking of this, Jiraiya's eyes unconsciously turned to Minato Namikaze. According to the information given by the teacher, Namikaze Minato possesses extremely strong sensitivity and nerve reaction ability, and may even be able to try to learn the Flying Thunder God technique from the second Hokage Tobirama. Is there really such a strong talent? As a disciple of his teacher, he had made countless military achievements and had read the book of sealed ninjutsu before. He had mastered most of the ninjutsu therein, but he had never been able to get started with the Flying Thunder God technique. If it is true as the intelligence suggests, then this child is really worth training. The guy from Orochimaru's team is called Yule, right? Let Minato blast him to pieces. At ho-ha-ha-ho-ha, a few people looked at Jiraiya, who started laughing for no apparent reason after finishing his comments, and a few black lines appeared on their foreheads. Is this teacher really reliable? Not to mention Jiraiya. For now, Orochimaru also received members of his own team, but when Jiraiya learned that Orochimaru took the initiative to lead the team, Jiraiya almost dislocated his jaw. Orochimaru actually took the initiative to lead the team. The otaku who stayed in the laboratory all day was actually willing to lead the team. Exclamation mark. This world is becoming more and more incomprehensible. Not only Orochimaru, if Tsunade didn't need to train medical ninjas in the hospital, she would also lead a team. However, it was also for this reason that Kushina was eventually assigned to the same team as Yuli. Although as usual, the composition of the team would be more balanced, with those with good grades mixed with those with poor grades to ensure the survival rate of the team. However, due to the special nature of Yule and Kushina, the team led by Orochimaru can be said to be the most elite team in the entire class. Let's go. A cold voice interrupted Yuli's wandering thoughts. She turned around and saw a pale-skinned, cold man with a pair of golden vertical pupils walking into the classroom. As soon as he came in, he saw Yuli and others sitting by the window at the back of the classroom. He didn't say anything, but kept looking at his students. Lord Orochimaru-sama, Hinata. Hisaho was the most excited. Veins on her temples bulged and she almost opened her Byakugan. Although Yuli had already told her that her team leader would be Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas, she still couldn't help but get excited when she saw the real person. There was a slight smile on Orochimaru's face. Yuli, who was familiar with him, knew that this was just Orochimaru's business expression. After all, Orochimaru was not very familiar with the others. Kushina originally had some complaints about her team leader being late, especially today's weather made her feel unusually irritated, but when she saw Orochimaru, she put all other unnecessary emotions behind her. Come on, this is Orochimaru. It's an honor to be his student. Although Tsunade, who is also one of the 3 ninjas, is my sister. How can this be compared? How can a lazy and sloppy woman who hangs out in the casino all day compare to the cool and handsome guy in front of her? Exclamation mark. That is to say, this is already a rare opportunity. Just wait and see. It's no big deal. But Lord Orochimaru looked a little cooler than the last time we ate hot pot. Yuli, who was standing aside, looked at the two people who were so excited that they forgot themselves, and felt a little embarrassed. He covered his face with his hands, left his position first, and walked towards Orochimaru. Seeing this, Kushina and Hyuga Hisagi hurriedly followed, as they didn't want to give Orochimaru a bad impression at Konoha's No. 5 training ground. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds seemed like they would fall at any time. There was no wind and the woods were quiet. I'm Orochimaru, and I'll be your future leader, Jonin. I don't want to say any nonsense, but some procedures still need to be followed. Give a brief introduction of yourself, including your name, hobbies, and future dreams. Orochimaru looked at the three children in front of him. Originally, he only needed to know their names, but as he asked the question 3 years ago, Yule, why do you want to be a ninja? As he spoke, Orochimaru suddenly looked up at the sky. There was nothing there, but he knew that his teacher must be observing this place with a telescope technique. In fact, Orochimaru was right. At this moment, there was more than just Sarutobi Hiruzen in the Hokage's office. Next to them, Danzo Shimura, and Midokado, and Kaoru Utane were all here. The picture in the crystal ball in front of Sarutobi Hiruzen kept changing, and just now it cut to Jiraiya. Haha, Minato is still a child worth training. We can focus on training him. Well, this child has a strong will of fire. He is a good candidate, Utane. Kaoru and Midamanen commented on it and admired Minato Namake's dream. Nowadays, a ninja who doesn't want to be a Hokage is not a good ninja. Having talent adds weight to it, and having this dream at least shows that he has a strong sense of belonging to Konoha. However, Danzo on the side did not say anything about this. He did not care about these things. At this moment, he just wanted to see what Yuli would say. He also wanted to know the question that Orochimaru asked Yule 3 years ago. Yule, what is your purpose in becoming a ninja? Chapter 20 Assessment. Under the gaze of everyone, the three began to introduce themselves one by one. Although Yuli felt that this was unnecessary, his word did not count. My name is Hinata Hisaha. I am a member of the Hyuga branch family. I like taking walks on rainy days. I hate nothing. My dream is to be myself and have the right to make my own choices. When Orochimaru heard this, he nodded without comment. It was not surprising that Hyuga Hisako had this dream. It was really the rules of the Hyuga family that made these branch family members unable to raise their heads. The main family is high and mighty, and the branch family will devote their entire lives to the main family, without any choices or thoughts of their own. A bird in a cage? Perhaps the only concept before birth is the so-called protection of white eyes. After birth, it has become a tool for the main family to control the branch family. Taking a deep breath, Hinata Hisaho decided to say this after a long period of psychological work. If these words were heard by the people in the main family, she would be finished. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. I love delicious food, I like beautiful scenery, and I hate being called red pepper and tomato. My dream is, perhaps, to become a great Hokage. As she spoke, Kushina's tone began to drop. Does she really want to be Hokage? Kushina doesn't know at this moment. The scenes of that night began to replay in her mind. Explosions continued, houses were destroyed, and her loved ones lay in a pool of blood. With hatred and fear on their faces, the family ancestral hall was destroyed by the fire, and the raging flames engulfed the place where he had lived since childhood. But I can't do anything. My dream is to become stronger. Stronger. Flames burned in his eyes. Wisps of Nine Tails chakra emanated from his body, and his eyes were stained with scarlet. Ho-ha-ho-ha. The smell of hatred. Little girl, let me out and let us destroy this filthy village. Inside Kushina's body, in the sealed space, the sealed Nine Tails felt Kushina's hatred. A hint of interest appeared in its eyes, and it couldn't help but seduce her. The evil Uchiha man with red eyes is dead, and the man who slapped himself to the ground with a big Buddha on his head and kept saying that his power was too strong and must be restrained is also dead. As long as he can regain his freedom, he must repay this village that has sealed him for decades with a few big balls. Snort. Kushina ignored the Nine Tails' tempting words and calmed herself down a little. As her mind moved, the Nine Tails chakra covering her body shrank back. Orochimaru's slightly tense body relaxed slightly, witnessing Kushina's behavior. Some looked at her sideways and nodded slightly. The information said that Kushina could open the two tails, and it seemed that her control over the Nine Tails chakra was indeed good then. Orochimaru looked at the last person, Yuli, who was quietly wiping the tang sword that was forged with a matte finish. This is the graduation gift that Danzo gave to Yuli. It contains 20% chakra conducting material and costs a full 2 million taels, which can be said to be a huge investment. How about you, my little sir? With a smile on his face, Orochimaru was very interested in what Yule would say. In other words, this interest has lasted for 3 years. Not only Orochimaru, but also the old men and women in the office in the Hokage building leaned forward slightly, somewhat curious about what Yuli would say. My name is Yule. My hobby is eating delicious food. I hate the nutritious meals prepared by the uncles in the root. PFFT this kid. As soon as these words were spoken, Kushina couldn't help but laugh, and Orochimaru on the side couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth. In the Hokage building, Danzo twitched his mouth and didn't know what to say for a moment. Also, I hate war. In an instant, the surroundings became quiet. No one likes war. My dream is to live a good life, alive. He asked this question subconsciously, and everyone was a little confused at this time, but Yuli did not respond to it. Instead, he raised his head and stared at Orochimaru seriously. Teacher, 3 years ago, you asked me what the purpose of becoming a ninja was. So, perhaps I can give you the answer I have now. I want to live well, but this world is twisted. To live here, I need strength, powerful strength. In order to live well, I want to explore the unknown, explore higher levels of mystery, and gain more powerful strength. Becoming a ninja is a stepping stone to this goal, and it is also the sword and shield that leads me to my goal. But before achieving the ultimate goal, peace is the prerequisite for exploration. When Orochimaru heard Yuli talk about exploring the unknown, a glimmer of interest appeared in his eyes. He looked at Yuli deeply, his eyes calm, and said nothing more. Everyone has his own purpose for becoming a ninja, be it fame, profit, or protection. For him, exploring the unknown, finding the mysteries of the world, and exploring the truth of the world are what he has always been pursuing. He is cunning to outsiders, cruel to insiders, and will do anything to achieve his goals. All his actions are only about gains and losses. He never pursues power and money. Even his pursuit of Hokage is only what his teacher wants. He had long since left behind the baser pleasures of life. Therefore, he was interested in what Yuli said about exploring the unknown. In a sense, Yuli seemed to be the same type of person as him. Living life is inherently fragile, and strength is only a brick and mortar to the goal. Even Sarutobi and the others at the table did not respond to Yule's answer. As I just said, everyone has different purposes for becoming a ninja. What Yuli said is not a departure from Konoha. Peace is also what the first generation and everyone pursues together. But there was a glimmer in Danzo's eyes. Yule, alive, then, what if it was for Konoha? Okay, I have limited time. It is now 1357. No matter what means you use, you must take these 3 bells from me before 1900 hours. As he spoke, Orochimaru took out 3 small silver bells from his pocket and shook them casually. The bells collided and made a crisp tinkling sound. Those who get the bell will officially join my team. For those who don't, I'm sorry, but you may need to go back to school for another year. So, if you don't want to go back, try your best. Upon hearing Orochimaru say this, Yuli and the others were stunned. This was completely different from what they had imagined. They had also never heard that the team leader needed to pass another round of assessment. Hinata Hisao had the biggest change in emotion. His face was full of determination. He had to get the bell. No, he couldn't go back. Orochimaru just watched the changes in their expressions quietly, with a slight smile on his face, and stepped back a little. Well, the assessment begins now. Let me see what you can do. Lee and the others stood there, discussing countermeasures. Orochimaru said to seize the bell, but didn't say anything else. Plus it was still early, so naturally, they didn't hide. Showing weakness to the enemy is also a way to deal with the enemy. While the 3 were thinking about how to divide the work to fight the enemy, Orochimaru, who was not far away, did something that no one expected. He smiled at Yuli and the others, and gently shook the bell in his hand twice towards them, attracting the attention of Yuli and the others. Watching their eyes move with his movements, Orochimaru laughed out loud. Then, under Soren's horrified gaze, he tilted his head back, opened his mouth, and gently threw the bell into his mouth. Along with the sound of swallowing, one could clearly see the movement of Orochimaru's throat moving. I rely on, well, seeing Orochimaru's action, Yuli knew that it was useless to use some tricks, so he simply gave up the discussion. He looked back at Hinata Hisaihi and got a nod of confirmation from him. Helpless, Kushina on the side was also speechless. It had already been swallowed. What should I do, unless you cut open the stomach, you? Lee's expression had changed at this time, and he looked indifferent. He knew clearly the purpose of Orochimaru's action: either restrict my movements, rip open my stomach, or just kill me. Haha, don't be shy, just use all your skills. I'm waiting for you here. Today, I'll teach you the first lesson of ninja, hearing Orochimaru's hoarse and cold words. Kushina and Hyuga Kyukura couldn't help but shudder. What a cold and crazy assessment. This is just an assessment. Why does it have to go to this extent? Hinata Hisaihi didn't understand, and Kushina didn't understand either. She didn't know why Lord Orochimaru, who had been so gentle before and would take the initiative to pick up food for her, would say such a thing. Kill me, you. Lee would not have these concerns. The other party was his teacher. Since he had told him how to pass the assessment, all he needed to do was to execute it perfectly. Although he might not be able to kill Orochimaru with his own abilities, and it might even be difficult to defeat him, Yuli would not be afraid before the battle. This was not allowed by the teachings he had received, and it was something he himself could not allow. He held the tang sword tightly in his hand, unsheathed it, and the blade flashed a faint black light in the sunlight. Yuli took the lead in launching an attack. His figure was as fast as the wind. Several shurikens broke through the air and flew out from 3 different angles, heading towards Orochimaru at the same time. The tang sword in his hand cut through the air and stabbed straight into Orochimaru's chest. He won't give in at all. Orochimaru looked at the murderous intent in Yuli's eyes and was quite pleased. He turned his body slightly to the side and easily avoided Yuli's attack. At the same time, he backhanded and activated the Shadow Snake hand, and several poisonous snakes rushed towards Yuli. Yuli slashed with his sword, cutting off the 2 snake heads, and at the same time he retreated violently. Seeing this, Hyuga Hisato launched a soft fist, opened his Byakuya eyes, and blue energy burst out from his temples. He pointed his gun like a dragon, trying to block Orochimaru's acupuncture points. Orochimaru spewed out a fireball, forcing Hyuga Hisato to retreat. Kushina was wrapped in the 9 tails chakra, forming a translucent red fox coat, and the 2 tails behind her swayed wildly. Instantly appeared above Orochimaru's head, and with a heavy hammer, he slammed Orochimaru to the ground. Boom! A puff of smoke dissipated, and a small flower snake appeared in its place, but Orochimaru was nowhere to be seen. Not bad, but if this is all you have, you should go back to the ninja school as soon as possible. Roar! In an instant, a red figure rushed out from the smoke. The sharp claws grabbed Orochimaru directly, but were blocked by more than 10 pythons of different lengths and thicknesses. Halfway through their flight, the sharp claws of the beasts cut the pythons in half. Yuli saw the opportunity, tightened his grip on the tang sword, and rushed towards Orochimaru. Hinata Hisaihi on the side also leaned forward and got close to Orochimaru. Looking at Kushina's beast-like eyes, Orochimaru couldn't help but admire her nice eyes. However, the movements were still too immature, without any feints. Such an attack was tantamount to suicide, especially since it was a frontal attack. However, considering that Kushina was using the 9 tails chakra at this time, it was understandable that the strong negative emotions had such a great impact on her. It's just that the coordination is lacking. He still stood there, not panicking at all when facing the siege of 3 people. Chapter 21 Passed the test. Yuli's legs exploded, and the powerful force raised a cloud of dust on the ground. He swung his arms, and with a whoosh of breaking wind, he threw the wind towards Orochimaru's face. Swish! Orochimaru kept smiling and turned his head slightly to avoid Yuli's attack. At this time, Yuli had already approached, and his body sank down to come in front of Orochimaru. He supported himself on the ground with his hands, and used the reaction force to kick Orochimaru in the head, forcing Orochimaru into the air with a strong wind. As Orochimaru leaped upwards, Kushina took advantage of the situation and attacked, a smile on her face. She really likes the feeling of punching someone in the flesh. He punched at Orochimaru, who countered with his own fist. Bang! The moment the powerful force came from his palm, Orochimaru realized that he had underestimated Kushina's strength and was kicked away by this kick. This is the Jinchuriki. There was a hint of surprise in Orochimaru's eyes. You know, although the Jinchuriki is a village's high-end combat force, the tailed beasts are too uncontrollable and generally speaking they will not be used easily. There was no time to think about it, as his sharp ears caught the sound of the shuriken cutting through the air. Looking in the direction of the sound, He saw more than a dozen shurikens shooting out from the dust and fog, and the target was clearly him. In the air, the sand in this place was fine and loose, and it was easy to stir up dust clouds that were enough to block the view. This was equal for both sides, but the other party could accurately capture his position, which made him a little confused. It's the child from the Hyuga family. Having guessed the reason, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with interest. The strength of these boys, at least until now, has already met the requirements of the normal Jinan. However, he still needs to wait and see if they can gain his approval. Wind. Escape. Big breakthrough. Orochimaru, who was in midair, formed seals with his hands in an instant and opened his mouth to spit out a gust of wind towards the flying shuriken. The howling gale instantly scattered more than a dozen shurikens, and then blew towards the dust and Yuli on the ground. The strong wind came suddenly, and the three of them were blown away without any resistance. Not noticing for a moment, Yuli grasped the tang sword and thrust it hard into the ground. The sword pierced into the ground with a grunt, and a small part of the blade was embedded in the dust, which fixed his body in place. At the same time, he stretched out his right hand and grabbed Hinata Hisaho, who was losing his balance and flying backwards. As for Kushina, her sharp claws have a much stronger grip than Hyuga Hisahi. Water. Escape. Water prison technique. Orochimaru didn't put up much resistance and was trapped in Yule's water prison. Kushina leaned forward, and with a burst of chakra, her speed even left a shadow in the eyes of ordinary people. Orochimaru felt satisfied. At least so far, some of the characteristics and methods of the three people had slowly been revealed to him. Tsukai's physical fitness, swordsmanship, and ninjutsu, Kushina's mastery of the tailed beast chakra, and Hinata Hisahi's Byakugan and gentle fist. Orochimaru dodged Kushina's claw attack by leaning sideways, and under the reflection of the golden pupils, he quickly blocked with both hands. Hinata Hisahi came forward and bullied him. Hyuga. Soft fist, 8 trigrams 16 palms, fists flew in all directions, swinging towards Orochimaru, who had just left the water person. Drop with a palm, chop horizontally, turn around and pierce with a palm. In just a few breaths, Hinata Hisahi's movements changed several times, and his movements were so fast that Yuli, who was standing beside him, couldn't help but be a little surprised. Boom. Orochimaru found the right time, took advantage of Hinata Hisahi's weakness, and kicked Hinata Hisahi's abdomen with a bang. Hinata Hisahi fell back in a rather embarrassing manner. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and the veins on Hinata Hisahi's forehead became more obvious. Soft fist, 8 diagrams 36 palms, 8 trigrams, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms. Orochimaru faced Hinata Hisahi directly, and the chakra in his body showed signs of being unable to condense. Not bad. A black blade swept over. The tang sword wrapped in wind attribute chakra slashed straight towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru bent down and dodged Yuli's attack. At the same time, he held a kunai in his hand and knocked away Kushina, who was attacking from behind. Looking at the surrounded situation, he made 2 clicks in his mouth and disappeared on the spot. Art. Fire escape. Ho fireball. Teacher, I will let you know that these years have not been wasted. Water style. Water array wall. A strong stream of water like a waterfall spit out from Yule's mouth, avoiding Kushina and the other person, and annihilated Orochimaru's fireball in the water. A long battle. Haha, teacher, it seems that we won. Having said that, there was a hint of doubt in Yuli's eyes. He didn't believe that his teacher's ability was limited to this level. Go ahead, Yule. This is also the first lesson I'm teaching you. There was some silence. Yuli and the other 2 looked at each other, but Kushina and Hinata Hisahi just couldn't bring themselves to do it. Seeing this, Yuli looked back at the bound Orochimaru and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Teacher, I'm sorry. He raised his palm, and as the chakra flowed, a faint green light appeared on his hand, as sharp as a blade, and easily cut open Orochimaru's abdomen. Boom. Orochimaru disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving behind only a 2-meter-long black snake that was more than 10 centimeters thick. When the snake's belly was cut open, 3 blood-stained bells were found inside from the woods behind him. Orochimaru slowly walked out, but at this moment, there was a real smile on his lips. Congratulations, you have successfully passed the assessment. From now on, this world will truly be open to you. The first lesson has been successfully concluded. Carry out the mission and don't hold back too much emotion. As he said this, Orochimaru glanced at Hyuga Kayukazu, who was lying weakly on the ground. Gather here at the same time tomorrow. By the way, keep up the good work. You did a good job today. After Saying that, Orochimaru disappeared from the spot, leaving Yuli and the others lying on the ground to rest. After a while, Yuli sat up. The injuries he had suffered at the beginning had almost recovered. He condensed green chakra in his hands and performed healing magic for the two of them. You actually know medical ninjutsu, Hinata. Hizo looked at Yuli in shock. This, no big deal, but, for the first lesson, Lee knew that even if Orochimaru's abdomen was cut open and he would really die, he would still swing the knife without hesitation, but he would swing a chakra scalpel. There is always some emotion. Cut it open, sew it up. At night, Yula lay on the bed, looking at the gray concrete room. A bright incandescent lamp illuminated the room. Still not strong enough. It's just a snake clone, but I put so much effort into it. But, teacher, you are really amazing. I couldn't sleep, so I walked out of the room and wanted to get some fresh air outside. Everything was fine except that it was too stuffy, which made me feel depressed. Passing by one of Danzo's offices, Yul was confused as to why there was still a light on inside. Walk forward and look inside. Crunch. Come in. What are you looking at? Inside the office, Danzo was processing the files in his hands. Recently, other villages had been a little restless, and Danzo was thinking about whether he should find something for them to do. Grandpa, it's so late, why don't you go to rest? He walked gently behind Danzo, stretched out his hands and pressed Danzo's shoulders. While adjusting his strength, Danzo put down the file in his hand, leaned back slightly, leaned back in the chair, and enjoyed Yul's massage. Hey, Yul, let me ask you, although Konoha won the World War II, the situation is not optimistic. The other 4 countries are eyeing it covetously and may start a war again at any time. In the current situation, if you were the leader of the route, what would you do? Feeling the hand on his shoulder pause, Danzo closed his eyes, enjoying this brief moment of peace. The villages have not yet fully recovered, but the lack of supplies has led to the expansion of internal conflicts in the villages. They need an external point of contact to release the pressure, so what we need to do is to interrupt their outward release of pressure, create a few new enemies for them, and weaken their thinking, cultivate forces that are hostile to hostile villages, conduct cultural invasions, strengthen the concept of feminine beauty, and export the culture that Konoha's air is sweet, people are free, and have a good quality of life. A series of strategies came out of Yuli's mouth. Danzo, who had been testing him, suddenly opened his eyes and looked back at Yuli in surprise. At this moment, Yuli looked calm, as if he was not the one who said these words. Okay, ha. As expected of my grandson, Danzo, he stood up instantly and looked at Yuli with shining eyes. At this moment, he no longer had an indifferent expression. Come on, Grandpa will take you to find that guy Hiruzen, ha. Yuli hadn't seen Danzo laugh so happily for a long time. Although Yuli had forgotten how he came up with these things, they suddenly popped up in his mind when Danzo asked about them. Bang, Hiruzen. Hiruzen, come out quickly. I need you for something. Hiruzen, here I come. Why are you here so late at night? Danzo, Zio. Yul is here too. Come on. Zio, come in quickly. Walking out of the mansion, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Sarutobi Biwako, wearing pajamas and looking sleepy, saw Danzo with an anxious look and Yuli with a calm face. There are indeed some differences between these two father and son. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, The Strategy of Weak People. Biwako pulled Yul to her side, rubbed his head, and looked at him lovingly. This child has suffered a lot, being picked up from the battlefield by little Tsunade and little Orochimaru, and then staying with old man Danzo for a few years. Such an honest and lovely child. He raised his head and glanced with displeasure at the old man who was pulling Hiruzen inside. It was really ridiculous that he was dragging Yuli here so late at night. Hiruzen, you know, at first I asked Yuli to analyze how to deal with the current situation. You would never have thought what Yuli said. Yul, come on, say what you said at the beginning again. This, Danzo, are you sure this is the plan Yul proposed? Nonsense. How could I deceive you? Seeing that Hiruzen was a little suspicious, Danzo puffed out his beard and glared. Well, This was the beard he had grown specially in the past 2 years, just to show his authority in front of Yuli, although Yuli has always respected him. No, 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 you know that's not what I mean. Sarutobi was a little speechless, scratched his head, and looked at Yuli in surprise. This child, a combination of Orochimaru and Danzo. Somehow, this sentence suddenly appeared in Sarutobi's mind. He really didn't expect that Yuli would say such shocking words if what Yuli said at the beginning about cultivating hostile forces, dividing the strength of other villages, and offering rewards on the black market were all within the normal range, then the subsequent cultural invasion, the so-called cultural output of feminine beauty, the infinite beautification of Konoha, and even the suggestion that the air was sweet. This was a battle of ideas. Thoughts and culture are always more impactful than flesh and blood. Strong physical strength may lead to temporary strength, but ideas and culture are the foundation for the long-term survival of a village or a country. Isn't this the perfect interpretation of the will of fire proposed by the first-generation Senju Hashirama, where the leaves are flying, the fire is burning, the strong village self-confidence makes every person in Konoha confident and pursue peace. Even the old fellow Ishikawa, the first Tsuchikage of the Iwagakure, tried to steal Hashirama's thoughts and adapt them into his own so-called will of the rock. Bah, what a bunch of thieves. Well, Yule, you can rest here tonight. Biwako, you can take Yule to rest. Danzo and I still need to discuss something. Sarutobi. Biwako, who had been standing aside without saying a word, gave a blank look to Sarutobi, Hiruzen and Danzo, who were in high spirits, and came to Yuli. Come on, Yule, let's ignore them. Grandma will take you to rest. Go ahead. I remember you have to go to Orochimaru tomorrow, right? Well, I'll go down first. Grandpa Hiruzen, go ahead, go ahead. Tell your Biwako grandmother if you need anything, and she'll ask Haruko to get it for you. Yeah, Grandma, let's go. Taking Biwako's hand, Yuli bowed slightly to the two of them and let Biwako lead him to the wing room. That night, the hall of Sarutobi Hiruzen's residence was brightly lit until dawn. Yuli also slept soundly in the side room, but the room was made of tatami, which made it difficult for Yuli to adapt. For a while, the night slowly faded away, and at 5 in the morning, Yuli got up early, left the Sarutobi residence at the invitation of Biwako, and walked towards the bun shop. It was still early, far from the time set by Orochimaru. There was a slight mist in the sky, making everything look a little hazy. The early breakfast shops were now open to welcome customers, and fragrant vapor was spreading in the air. Ordinary people struggling to survive were already wandering the streets, and occasionally 2 members of the Uchiha clan's police department would pass by, but they had sleepy looks on their faces. The people around him also gave him some distance and tried not to escape him. Yuli was no longer surprised by this. He was not very familiar with the Uchiha clan members, so naturally he didn't care whether the Uchiha clan members were liked by the villagers or not. He couldn't provide his emotions to so many people. As he walked, Yuli was recalling yesterday's battle. He had to admit that he still had too little practical experience. Even though the amount of chakra in his body was now comparable to that of an ordinary Jonin, this had nothing to do with his combat effectiveness side. Not knowing when he will be able to possess the same strength as teacher Orochimaru, Yuli is pursuing power. But the purpose of pursuing power is to be able to live well, to see the world from my parents and everyone in the village. Only by living can we have everything. He shook his head, stopped thinking about these things, and took a bite of the meat bun that was oozing with juice. I took a breath. The freshly baked buns were a little hot, and then I sighed with satisfaction. As expected, the only thing in this world that cannot be wasted is delicious food. As the sun slowly rose, the whole of Konoha gradually woke up. The sky changed from dark blue to light blue, dotted with a few faint morning glows. The warm sunshine shines on Yuli. Ah! The corpses are getting warm. Orochimaru looked at the students in front of him, all with different postures but full of the youthful aura, with a smile on his face, but then quickly restrained it and said lightly, "The village is now in the recovery stage, and we are short of manpower. There are many tasks accumulated in the task hall, but as newly graduated ninjas, the tasks suitable for you are a waste of time." After a pause, under the expectant gazes of several people, Orochimaru spoke again, "But I have asked the Hokage-sama to accept a few missions for you. I need to leave the village, so I'd like to take this opportunity to get to know you. I'll tell you in advance that these missions will require bloodshed." As he said this, Orochimaru glanced at Yuli, who had a faint smile on his face. This child had seen blood a few years ago, so there was no need to worry too much of the other two. Perhaps only Hinata Hisao needs to overcome some psychological issues, or Orochimaru has basically never led a team. For him, taking care of little kids is the most troublesome thing. Not only that, any task suitable for these little kids is a waste of time in life for him. What is looking for a cat, what is weeding, what is delivering something. Therefore, Orochimaru specially examined the strength of Yule and others yesterday. After confirming that they were capable of the task of leaving the village, Orochimaru decisively went to find Sarutobi and secured the task of leaving the village for his team as a disciple of Hokage. This shouldn't be easy. Does he really have to screen them one by one from the mission hall? He looked at the time. Well, they would leave the village in 3 days. During these 3 days, he needed to teach these little guys, follow me. After saying this, Orochimaru turned and walked towards the woods outside the training ground. When he came to a place near the river, Orochimaru pointed to the big tree next to him. Can you climb trees and tread water? He said that. Orochimaru turned his head and looked at Yule. I know you can, so just leave it alone. Oh, you. Lee couldn't help but pout when he saw Orochimaru actually bringing them here to practice this. I will, Kushina. On the side said weakly that as a Jinchuriki, her chakra control ability was inherently weaker than others. In the past few years when she practiced with Yule and Minato, she mainly learned to control chakra and communicate with the nine tails in her body. Even though the big fox was at Sundeer all day and didn't pay much attention to her, the fact that he could now control the two tails showed that the nine tails had finally eased up on Kushina. Kushina had already made up her mind. Once she got to the three tails, she would tear off the sealing talisman and allow the nine tails to condense a small clone to come out and get some fresh air. This would be her compensation to him. Teacher, I haven't tried it. What? Surprised Yuli was that Hinata Hisao raised his hand. You know, although Yuli didn't have much contact with Hinata Hisao in the past 3 years, judging from the strength Hinata Hisao showed yesterday, he didn't seem like someone who didn't know these things. Well, my parents died in the war, and I was raised by my clan. No one taught me these things, even the 8 diagrams 32 palms I learned yesterday was something I'll learn secretly. Sorry, Kushina, what should I do? Ju, as members of a team, we will be a family from now on. Don't worry, we are here for you. With a smile on her face, Kushina gently hugged Hinata Hisao and felt Hisao's body stiffen for a moment before slowly relaxing. Orochimaru did not stop him. This scene made him miss his experiences with Tsunade and Jiraiya when they were young. At that time, they did not have so many experiences, and they were not separated from each other due to various things. Enjoy the moment, kids. Chapter 23, the first mission out of the village. In this way, the three people were divided into 2 different learning progress. Hinata Hisao practiced climbing trees and treading water under the guidance of Orochimaru, while Yuli and Kushina focused on practicing ninjutsu. However, it must be said that as a member of the Hyuga family, Hinata Hisao has extraordinary talents. With the help of the Byakugan, she completed the tree climbing exercise in just one morning and was able to walk freely on the trunks and branches. With the Byakugan turned on, she could see the flow of chakra in her body and distribute the chakra supply accordingly, thus ensuring that the chakra wrapped under her feet was evenly distributed. At this time, Yuli was practicing Orochimaru's Shadow Snake Hand. Since he possessed extraordinary chakra, he must learn this ninjutsu that could clear out the minions, confuse the vision, and block the enemy. Of course, this extraordinary chakra is only compared to normal people. Compared with a Jinchuriki like Kushina, it's purely asking for trouble. Kushina on the other hand was practicing controlling her emotions in two tails mode and finally controlling her chakra in such situations. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, sealing techniques were something she could not afford to fail in, but all of this required precise chakra control, which could no longer be provided by simply climbing trees and treading water. The next day, the progress was rapid. Hinata Hisao, who had already completed the tree climbing and water treading tasks set by Orochimaru, also joined Yuli and the others in their training. 3 days was a short time, but with Orochimaru's targeted guidance, although the strength of the two did not improve greatly, after all, that was not very likely, their respective foundations were improved again. As for Yuli, he has been mainly learning some of Orochimaru's snake-based ninjutsu these days, and integrating them into his own combat system. As a disciple of Orochimaru, how can I not learn the ancestral skills of Ant Snake, eh? And Snake? What the hell is this? He shook his head. Sometimes some strange words would pop up in his mind, but Yuli didn't think much about it. He just thought that his thinking was too divergent. However, For Kushina and Hinata, the improvement they have achieved is relatively greater, and this is also one of the main significance of the team leader's existence. What they need to do is not only to help these fledgling newcomers adapt to the life of ninjas more quickly, but also to cultivate their combat awareness and allow them to grow quickly, but also to improve their strength. Of course, everyone has different talents, but this is not too obvious in the Yule team. Jiraiya's team, who are also 3 ninjas, have already had some impressions at this time. As a genius ninja chosen by Sarutobi Hiruzen, Minato was naturally the focus of Jiraiya's training. However, the other 2 teammates had an unstable foundation and were still in the stage of laying the basics. The gap between them and Minato had already widened. Even if Jiraiya tried to give them more guidance, they couldn't understand it. However, Jiraiya did not give up on them completely, he just focused more energy on Minato. This world is inherently unfair. The future achievements of many people are destined from the moment they are born. Some people are gifted, while others are 1 in a million. Hard work can allow a person to reach his or her upper limit as much as possible, but some people's born lower limit is already the upper limit you can reach. But it's always right to work hard. At least if you work hard, you may be able to see the scenery slightly better. The biggest watershed in life comes from the mother's amniotic fluid. Thinking of this, Jiraiya sighed, and then looked back at the intimate paradise in his hand. This can be improved. When will I look for materials again? Before, he had been observing Yuli's growth on paper, but now that he actually started to teach him, Orochimaru finally felt Yuli's talent. Although Yuli has not yet reached the level of the Uchiha clan to directly copy ninjutsu, he can still learn it quickly, and quickly become familiar with it and put it into use afterwards. On that rainy day, from the moment he reached out his hand to the boy, he was destined to see a bright future for this child. He will become a towering tree that provides shelter for Konoha from the wind and rain. The day before departure, late at night, at the root training ground, Yule is still undergoing high-intensity training. Beside her is a pile of nutrients, which are high-concentration energy liquids developed by the root and are only suitable for Yule. Normal people don't have such a strong transformation ability. He casually opened a nutrient solution and poured it into his mouth while pinching his nose. Tisk. Can't you guys consider the taste a little bit? It's too unpalatable. Okay, Yule, it's time to go to bed. You still have to go out of the village to carry out a mission tomorrow, so you need to adjust a little. No, Uncle Quing, it's okay, I know my limits. Well, then you should rest early and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Looking at Watanabe Quing's receding figure, Yuli put down the dumbbells in his hand and untied the weight plates tied to his legs, giving the body a strong pressure environment, so that the speed will be greatly improved without any weight. The moon was high in the sky, and I didn't know how long it had been. After wiping the sweat off his face, Yuli found that the ground where he was standing was already covered with a light layer of sweat. He wiped it with a towel and walked towards the dormitory. I will carry out my first mission tomorrow, and I'm quite excited just thinking about it. I don't know what task the teacher has taken. Yuli would lie on the experimental table in the Root Research Institute once every week. He knew that his physical fitness was improving every moment. Even though the process was not fast, it never stopped at the same time. The cells in the body are extremely active and the energy conversion efficiency is extremely fast, which also makes Yuli's recovery ability far beyond the range of normal people. In the eyes of Orochimaru and others, Yule's physical characteristics are almost similar to those of a tailed beast, or in other words, Yule is a weakened version of a tailed beast, judging from his current growth rate, super strong recovery ability, super high conversion rate, constantly improving physical fitness, except that it can't transform its body into pure chakra form like the tailed beasts in the future, after swinging the sword 1,000 times. Today's training was finally over. After completing today's exercise task, Yuli took a medicinal bath and returned to the room to rest. The next day, I got up early. The muscle strain and other injuries caused by excessive exercise yesterday had completely recovered. I stretched my limbs and my bones began to crack. His strong physical strength is the basis for his high-intensity training. Arriving at the main gate of Konoha, he took a look at the place that changed his destiny a few years ago, and couldn't help but feel emotional. It was still early, and there was a light vapor in the air, making it a little moist. While quietly stroking the tang sword in his hand, Yuli saw Kushina and Hinata walking over from not far away. They met on the road and came together after greeting each other. Kushina's face was full of sleepiness, because she was going to go on a mission today, which made her excited for a long time, and she didn't sleep well all night. Orochimaru hadn't arrived yet, so the few of them started chatting, but it was mainly Kushina who spoke, with Yule and Ju agreeing on the side, and for a moment there was a certain harmony in the atmosphere. Not long after, Orochimaru also arrived here without any delay. Orochimaru walked in front, handed the village exit certificate to the guard, and after taking a look at it, he left Konoha with Yuli and others. This was also the first time Yuli left Konoha. Looking back at the town surrounded by city walls, Yuli felt a little emotional for a moment. This is a sea-level mission. The goal is to wipe out the bandits. I will explain the details to you when we get there. Now hurry up and get going. After making sure that everyone had heard it, Orochimaru took the lead and quickly left Yuli, and the others hurriedly caught up. Along the way, Orochimaru deliberately tested everyone's level and did not stop. The first person to collapse was Hyuga Hisaha. The Hyuga family wasn't known for their chakra capacity to begin with, so it was fair to say that only Tsukal and Kushina were able to keep up with him. Seeing this, Orochimaru stopped and found a place to set up camp and rest. This mission is a mission that the villagers at the foot of Kingnu Mountain raised money to launch in the village. The reason is that a group of bandits came to Kingnu Mountain this year. There are a few wandering samurai among the bandits, but no escaped ninjas, because this group of people came to the village every once in a while to burn, kill and loot, and use the villagers at the foot of the mountain as a storage warehouse. The villagers could not bear the harassment and finally chose to come to Konoha for help. Therefore, the village was classified as sea level. What you have to do is to wipe out this group of bandits. After taking a breath for a while, Orochimaru stood up and saw that Hinata Hisaha had also recovered his strength, so he started on his way again in the evening. After resting for a while, the four people finally arrived at the foot of the mountain where their target was destroy all the bandits. In other words, this mission is not just about killing people, but also about killing them all without leaving a single one alive. In other words, this mission will involve killing. Orochimaru got this mission from Sarutobi Hiruzen because it was simple and most bandits would have extra income, so it was a mission with relatively high rewards and low risks. If it weren't for the identity of being a direct descendant of Hokage, it might not be easy to get it. The reason why he chose this mission was very simple. Except Yuli, the other two had never seen blood. But for ninjas, killing will run through their lives. However, everything has a beginning, so Orochimaru chose to make this mission the first blood in Yuli and others' ninja career. It can also be considered as sharpening the sword. Chapter 24. This is Ninja. Mission completed. After finishing the repair at the foot of the mountain, I quietly waited for the night to come. Tonight the moon is dark and the wind is strong, with the evening clouds covering the moon. It is a perfect night for murder. Layers of dark clouds piled up, cold winds blew, nightingales sang loudly in the woods, and the air was filled with wisps of water vapor. It looks like it will rain tonight. Feeling the coolness of the cold wind blowing on his cheeks, Orochimaru had a stern expression and cold eyes as he observed the condition of his disciple. Tonight's mission is to wipe out all the bandits, leaving no one alive. Do you understand? Clear. The three ninjas responded. According to the intelligence, the bandits' camp was on the mountainside. Since this trip was to train Yuli and the others, Orochimaru would only take remedial action when an accident occurred and would not take the initiative to attack. Therefore, at Orochimaru's command, Yuli and the other two took action instantly, disappeared on the spot, passed through the jungle, and moved forward at high speed in the woods. After seeing the three people set off, Orochimaru also disappeared from the spot. As a teacher, all he needed to do was to provide a safety net for Yuli and the others. For ninjas, the importance of gathering intelligence goes without saying. Standing a few kilometers away from the village, Yuli waved behind him, and Kushina and Hinata Hisaha stopped immediately. Kushina, Hisaha, you guys adjust here while I go investigate the situation in the village. It is good. As Yuli finished his words, he leaped through the woods and disappeared from Kushina's sight. Ju, you said Yuli will be okay, right? Trust him. Unable to see them, Orochimaru was watching their every move. Half an hour later, Yuli returned. After a rough investigation, there should be about 100 people in the entire village. There is a sentry tower in each of the four corners, with people guarding the night. There is also a night patrol team of 5 people in total. He used his finger to draw a simple layout of the village on the ground. Although the enemy are just ordinary bandits, we still have to be careful, especially Ju. Always pay attention to your chakra and don't let yourself fall into a state of exhaustion. Clear. It is good. Feeling the moist breath in the wind, Yuli grinned with a smile on his face. Tonight is a night of murder. Kushina looked at Yule, who was smiling and was a little speechless for a moment, as if she had never noticed this side of Yule. Yule stood up and headed towards the village first, followed by Kushina and Hyuga Hisahi, leaping and moving among the trees. When they arrived at the place, Yuli raised her hand and the three of them stopped. What came into the eyes of Kushina and Hisahi was a mountain village full of noise. It was already late at night, and the village was quiet except for the night watchman. Kushina, take out the 2 sentry towers at the back. Kai will take out the first 2, and I'll take care of the night patrol team. It is good. It is good. After erasing, act on your own. It's best not to make too much noise. You. Lee saw the 2 people nod and quickly sneaked in. He was very fast, and he moved only towards the 4 corners of the stronghold. None of the lazy bandits noticed them at the same time. Kushina and Hisahi also set off, rushing towards their respective goals. Yuli quickly aimed at the men on night patrol and shot several shurikens in his hand towards them. A sound of breaking through the air was heard. The man farthest away reacted and dodged to both sides. The shuriken scratched his arm, and he barely escaped with his life, but Yuli, who followed, would not let him go. The Tsunade scratched his neck, and the patrolman was covered with his mouth and nose by Yuli, forcing him to remain silent. The warm blood spurted out and splashed all over Yuli's face, reflecting off Yuli's smiling face. For a moment, it was unclear who was the devil, feeling the warm heat on her face and the rusty smell of blood rushing into her nose. Yuli curled the corners of her mouth. Don't worry about dying. I will remind you to live well. After saying this, he forced the bandits' eyes, which were as big as copper coins and filled with despair and resentment, to close. After killing the other patrolmen and making sure they were dead, Yuli groped his way towards the bandits' camp on the other side, looking at the sentry in front of her who was motionless and staring at the front. Kushina felt extremely uncomfortable, and her stomach kept twitching as if it was in resistance. Still unable to hold it back, Kushina vomited out everything she had eaten today. At this moment, the other surviving sentry tower in the distance also reacted. Enemy attack. A flare flew into the sky, emitting a sharp whistle and a dazzling light. At this time, Ju had completed his task and wiped the blood off his face. Is this what killing feels like? I was stunned for a moment, but I didn't seem to have much guilt. I didn't know if it was because I knew that these were all evil bandits and therefore didn't feel much, or if I was just a cold-hearted person by nature. Looking at the kunai in his hand that was dripping blood, Ju raised his head, his eyes blank, and looked at the dark clouded sky. Suddenly, a cry from another watchtower brought Ju back from his distraction. At this time, Yuli had just cleaned up a few rooms. These minions lived in groups of 3 or 4 in one room. Only those at the small leader level could be assigned a separate room. A few minutes later, Yuli and his companions reunited and looked cautiously at the bandits who had gathered in front of them. The bandits' clothes were strange, and the weapons they held were also bizarre. Compared with Yuli and the others, they could be said to be a mob. The only thing that could compare with them was their large numbers. Konoha's deterrent power is still very strong. The leader of the mountain stronghold was startled when he saw the forward protector on Yuli's neck, and then seemed a little angry and embarrassed, but he suppressed his anger. Well, the 3 heroes should be Konoha ninjas. I don't know how we have offended them. We will improve ourselves and will definitely reward them. Another burly man who looked somewhat similar to him interrupted him. You're just a kid. What are you afraid of? Brothers. Go ahead. This man is broad-shouldered and thick-waisted, with a face full of flesh. In his hand he holds a mace as thick as a man. He is the second in command of this group of bandits and also the younger brother of the big boss. He is cheering up the people behind him. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and rushed towards Yuli and the others. Art. Fire escape. Ho fireball. You. Lee would not tolerate him and directly spit out a fireball that was 1 meter in size and rushed straight towards the second in command. Boom. A burst of explosion sounded, and not only the second in command, but also several people around him were turned into a ball of charcoal that could not be seen. Achuan. I want you to die. The bandit leader stared blankly at his brother dying in front of him. He instantly became furious. His eyes red. Kushina on the side was still a little dazed at this time. Looking at Hinata Hisaha and Yuli standing in front of her, she gritted her teeth and also held the kunai in her hand. She can't hold everyone back here. Kushina, Kyuzu, don't hold back, you. Lee spoke and looked at the other party with some amusement. This group of bandits had done all kinds of evil before they came, but now they behaved differently when facing them. It was really interesting. Let's finish this quickly and don't keep the teacher waiting for too long. Ju nodded, his face expressionless. He threw the kunai and swung it at the bandits, and kept swinging out the bag with palm in his hand to cut off their heart meridians. The tang sword in Yuli's hand was shining with light, and a faint green light attached to it. He was like a wolf among a flock of sheep, and he killed the bandits like chopping melons and vegetables. The tang sword blocked to the side, blocking the oncoming longsword. At the same time, he took the opportunity to kill the bandit leader who was waiting for an opportunity behind. A light layer of chakra appeared on Kushina's body, and her eyes became sharp. She couldn't hold everyone back. Water. Release. Water dragon bullet technique. Soft. Fist. 8 diagrams 16 palms. Roar. Fire. Style. Great fireball technique. A scorching fireball spewed out of its mouth and flew into the crowd. Seeing the high temperature fireball flying over, the bandits already lost momentum completely dissipated, and the ferocity on their faces turned into shock. Bang. These are all ordinary people, so Yuli doesn't need to compress the fireball anymore. Instead, he tries his best to expand the attack range of the fireball. The fireball exploded, accompanied by screams. The high-temperature flames killed more than a dozen bandits on the spot, and an unpleasant smell of burnt meat floated in the air. At the same time, more than a dozen bandits were hit by the splashing flames. They were flapping their arms desperately and letting out sharp wails. The killing is in progress. For a long time, corpses were piled up in a mess on the ground. Bright red blood soaked the land, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of rust. Several people sat on the ground exhausted, not caring at all whether there was a corpse under them. Rumble. Thunder suddenly flashed across the gloomy sky, and the tragic lightning shone on everyone's faces. The tragic scene on the ground was laid out before them without reservation. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. Crash. Boom. As the first drop of water fell on Yuli's head, heavy rain began to fall from the sky in an instant, accompanied by roaring thunder. Several flashes of lightning suddenly streaked across the gloomy sky, and the brief light highlighted a large, hideous face. They killed all of them under this torrential rain. The fire on the mountain village was extinguished. The smell of burning, blood, and stench could not be covered up even by the heavy rain, and it rushed straight into the noses of Yuli and the others. The chakra coat on Kushina's body had dissipated. She lowered her head and looked at her hand, where blood was constantly dripping with the rain. With the help of the flashing lightning, she could see blood dripping from the tip of her hand. She tilted her head and looked around blankly. All she saw were countless corpses, charred houses, and those unwilling eyes looking at them for no reason. A chill rose from the bottom of my heart and spread throughout my limbs. I shivered instantly, but I didn't know if it was caused by the freezing wind and rain. This is a ninja, Hinata. Hisoka was looking at the corpses all over the ground, his body trembling constantly. Is this the price? Mission completed. Congratulations, you have successfully completed the mission. Orochimaru, who witnessed the whole process not far away, slowly walked out of the darkness. A clear voice came, announcing the end of this mission. Every step created a splash of water, and under the pale lightning, it was impossible to tell whether it was blood or rain. There was satisfaction in his eyes, and he believed that this lesson would leave a deep impression on several people. Young sir, this is the price of power. Are you still eager for it? Chapter 25. Feeling depressed. Along the way, several people maintained a strange silence. The usual liveliness was gone. Kushina didn't speak, nor did Hinata, Hisoka, and Yuli. Even their team leader Orochimaru remained silent. He didn't intend to explain anything. Ninja was just a profession. It was a bloody fact that people would insert blades into their hearts. If they can't resolve this issue themselves, then it might be a good thing for them to quit as soon as possible. However, Orochimaru was quite satisfied with Yule's condition, whether during the battle or after it was over, so Orochimaru often said that Yule was a natural ninja seed. The rain gradually became lighter, but it did not stop. Kushina stretched out her hand, and the cold rain gathered into a puddle in her palm. The raindrops hit her palm, stirring up waves of water. He stared in a daze at a puddle not far away. The bright flames shone on it. Raindrops fell from the sky and turned into little flowers, like fireworks blooming from the gods. After calming down a little, Kushina looked up, her face pale as she stared at her companions beside her in a daze. She was the one keeping watch at this time, while the others were resting and would return to the village to rest tomorrow. I'm sorry, but I won't stop. As if she had made up her mind, or as if she was hypnotizing herself, Kushina patted her head gently with her hand, brushing away some bad things, and regained her vigilance. At this time, Yuli, who was taking a nap nearby, sat up and tiptoed to her side. It's really hard, Kushina. Well, how should I put it? Ninja is not a fun game. Just like what teacher Yuitachiro said in class, from the moment we choose to become ninjas, our lives will be wrapped up in death. But I am still grateful because ninjas represent strength, the ability to protect yourself, and the ability to protect what you want to protect. Don't be afraid of your own strength, even if we don't always stand on the side of justice, we will always stand in front of the beings we wish to protect. After taking a deep breath and giving Kushina a smile, Yuli told Kushina to go and rest while he would take over. Being a ninja is never an easy job. The night passes quickly, especially when a person is worried. In the early morning, the sky was foggy and there was a chill in the air. The sun had just climbed over the top of the mountain and the ground was muddy. Orochimaru led the team and they returned to Konoha. However, unlike the excitement when they left the village, when they returned to the village, everyone had different expressions. However, one thing that was consistent was that everyone was not in a very high spirits. Go back and rest for a while. We will be carrying out high-intensity tasks later on, so we won't have much time to rest. Okay, teacher. Yes, learn. None of the three said another word until they returned to their own homes. It was unusually quiet. Master, what's going on? Watanabe. Ao knew that Orochimaru had taken them on a mission, but he didn't know the specific content. Looking at Yuli's gloomy face, he couldn't help but show a surprised expression. Yuli's smile never fades on normal days. Yuli didn't say anything, just shook her head, and went back to her room without even eating dinner. In the bathroom, I soaked myself in the bathtub. Slowly, I felt a suffocating feeling. I didn't hold it back any longer until I came to the surface. My messy hair covered my eyes and my vision became blurry. After a long time, he walked out of the bathroom and fell on the bed with a plop, without any strength left. Sir, Yuli, inside the office, Watanabe stood in front of Danzo with a look of worry on his face. Danzo didn't even raise his head, his attention was still on the file in his hand. As the leader of the route, he had a huge workload every day. It's okay. The kid is very strong. He just needs to adjust himself now, understood? Watanabe. Ao nodded, gestured to Danzo, and walked out the door, gently closing it. The room suddenly became quiet. There was no sound of footsteps as he walked, and it did not attract any attention. There was a faint click sound between the door and the door frame, and the sound was particularly clear in the room at this time. As Watanabe left, the atmosphere in the room seemed to change. The overhead lights fell on the floor, creating patches of light and shadow as if it was the influence of the Yule intelligence brought by Watanabe Quing. There was a cold and lonely atmosphere in the air, which made people fall into deep thought. Danzo put down the document in his hand and pinched his nose helplessly. Everyone has a first time. What he held in his hand at this moment was the detailed information about Yuli's mission. This time, although he acted as if he didn't care just now, it was just because he didn't want to show it. His fingers tapped lightly on the table, making a ticking sound. He looked up and glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. After pondering for a long time, Danzo slowly stood up, put on the coat hanging behind the chair, and walked slowly towards Yuli's room. Dong 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 hu. The sound in the room was a little cold, as if no one wanted to talk to the outside world at all. Danzo paused, keeping his voice soft. Well, he had done his best. Grandfather, tread tap. There was a sound of footsteps, and soon the door was opened. At this time, Yule was wearing a nightgown and opened the door for Danzo with bare feet. Grandpa, why are you here? Yule looked at Danzo, who appeared at the door, and was stunned. Come on, Grandpa will take you to eat hot pot. What, you? Lee seemed to be unable to react when he heard what Danzo said. He looked back at the clock hanging on the wall in confusion. 12:34. Grandpa, are you sure? Danzo's face darkened. Whether to go or not, hesitating. Go. Go. Go, you. Lee suddenly smiled, but then he hesitated for a moment. Grandpa, can you call my teammates? Sure, the old place, the rooftop of the Hokage building. Good. Lee, looking at Yule, who hurriedly ran out of the route, Danzo called Watanabe out to his side. You still have a solution, sir? Haha, after all I am his grandfather. Go call that old man Hirozen out. Oh, and ask Orochimaru, Tsunade and Jiraiya if they can come. Yes, I can only say that if the leader doesn't rest, how can the employees rest first? Impossible. So, our poor and honest worker King Jin called a few other root ninjas. Don't we deserve to have names? And ran together to call the Sandame Hokage and others at the same time. He instructed a few people to bring ingredients, kitchen utensils and other things to the Hokage building to set up the pot, boil the water, light the incense, and set up the lights. So that Lord Danzo would not have to wait for a long time. I have to say that there is a reason why Watanabe can sit in this position. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.